Live on WFLA now, this is Hey JB. Here's JB Buteau.
Unanswered questions after a tragedy near the Titanic. 5 people presumed dead. The Coast Guard saying from a catastrophic implosion believed to have occurred during the Titan submersible's descent into the depths of the Atlantic on Sunday. We honor the fallen 5. We examine your top questions and look ahead to what this all means going forward here live on WFLA now. Welcome back into the Stream Center, folks. I am not alone. Let's begin by introducing WFLA senior investigator Walt Buteau on Slider Cam. Walt, it's good to have you back, on stream. We've got a lot to chat about today. And then special guest, people wanted Mr. Mark Martin to return, and he is back here with us after a motorcycle ride right here in the Sunshine State. Mark, welcome back.
Thanks. There wasn't a lot of sunshine out today.
No, a lot of storms, I'm sure. A good amount of rain and clouds out there.
I was soaked.
I almost got soaked on the way in myself. So Walt, Mark, and I will be focused here, especially at the beginning of this stream. We're going to be joined by more guests over the coming hour plus, but what we're really going to be focused on are the top unanswered questions. We're going to ask you, folks, wherever you're watching from, whatever platform you're watching on, you can use any of the hashtags on your screen, hashtag HeyMark, hashtag HeyWalt, hashtag HeyJB, to punch in the number one question you have. And really, feel free to give it some thought, because we're going to start to animate them on screen in the coming minutes, but really give it some thought. What is your top number one unanswered question? Mark, you've had a chance to get a good night's sleep, I hope.
I did.
So did I. Walt, you get a good night's sleep? Mark, what's you're a pro's pro now. You bring 47 years of experience as far as deep sea stuff to the table here. Deep sea exploration. You're a former U.S. Navy submariner. What is your number one unanswered question?
I think the number one question is probably the number one question in the group of people that does underwater exploration for a living, and that is what failed. What failed? Obviously, we know there was an implosion. But what caused the implosion? And we don't know. We speculate, because that report is still unconfirmed, that they were having some issue before they lost comms because they were trying to drop weight. Then there was, they lost comms and there was the sound event. So I don't know. It's that's my number one question.
Mark,
what failed?
What failed? Well, let me point this out, because I want to jump off the point you just made about them dropping weight. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. You and I had a couple of laughs over the course of this, because you are self-admittedly not a techie. I think it's fair to say you're not on TikTok, right?
No.
Okay, well, you're viral on TikTok. People have been sending me
apparently
clips
on Instagram, but I don't know how to use it.
Right.
So.
Well, let me assure you, Mark, that people are sending me clips of your comments this week about hearing from a source that weights were dropped at some point on Sunday during the descent. That made a lot of commotion.
Well, they were attempting to drop weight.
Attempting to drop weight.
I don't know if they ever actually did, but I know TikTok's getting hits. My niece in Massachusetts last night texted me and said, "Hey, casually scrolling through TikTok," and I went, "Hey, I know that voice."
Yeah, our clips get shared in a lot of different places, including on TikTok, Instagram Reels, even elsewhere on YouTube and Facebook. But I want you to kind of help us piece all of this together now, because also as well, in addition to what you had heard and broke for us on stream regarding the attempts to drop weight during the descent, we're now also getting this bombshell Wall Street Journal report, Walt. Right. I'll bring Walt back on screen here as well. The Wall Street Journal reporting yesterday that the U.S. Navy had received word, or they were the ones who had heard an implosion in the North Atlantic, and then, of course, that information was relayed early on to search crews as the search and rescue operation really picked up momentum Sunday into Monday and carrying out through the course of the week. Mark, when you heard the Wall Street Journal report, your reaction was?
I told you so.
Right. Yep.
Try not to be flippant. Again, small community, we all know each other, at least to some extent, some obviously better than others. Jim Cameron had found out, he actually was on a ship on Sunday and didn't find out about this until Monday. And shortly after he found out about it, he heard about the sound event from some of his sources. I had heard about the sound event from a couple of my sources. Don Walsh had heard about the sound event from a couple of his sources. So a lot of our little group had it. And I will tell you that throughout the 5 hours I was on with you yesterday, that was in the back of my mind. And it was something that I said to people that were close to me as it happened. As soon as I heard the sound event, it's not very far out. The U.S. Navy operates submarines all over the planet, and frankly, sonar technicians can hear whales singing from sometimes 1,000 miles away. So I can tell you that we had at least one submarine, obviously speculation, but there was at least one that was within 1,000 miles of that. Not to mention that there are various hydrophone arrays spread around the oceans. So I'm not surprised that the report of that sound event came from the Navy. And even the Coast Guard has come out and said that, yes, the Navy heard it. They told us about it. It went to the Unified Command as soon as they heard it and figured out it was either an implosion or an explosion. They reported it to the Unified Command because this had already been reported. The Unified Command took that in stride as part of their planning process, but it wasn't enough information to stop an all-out rescue effort because they couldn't prove that it was an implosion and they couldn't prove exactly where it was. So turns out that is what it was. So the entire process has really been a recovery. I think I kind of relayed that yesterday several times that, while with the information we had, the possibility that they were alive was slim. We went over some of the scenarios, but I hopefully I made sure that everybody realized that while those were possibilities, what I thought was the highest probability was that they were on the bottom one way or the other, either intact or in pieces. They were on the bottom, but I thought it was a recovery mission right from the start.
Mark Martin joining us, and we have our next guest standing by to join the conversation as well, and we are going to be getting to him in just a second. I just want to follow up on one quick point there, Mark. Do you agree this became a global effort? I mean, we're talking about multiple nations all joining
absolutely.
in here to participate. We didn't know about the U.S. Navy hearing this underwater implosion until yesterday evening from the Wall Street Journal report. Do you agree with them withholding that information from the public, especially with the enormity of this story?
Yes, I do, because the people that needed to know about it were informed about it. The Unified Command of the response effort for the downing of this vehicle was notified immediately. They needed that information. It was not going to do the general public, even though the fact that a sound event had happened had been leaked, and I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. There are not everybody needs to know everything all the time or immediately. There are other aspects to consider. Were they looking for it? Yes, the Unified Command knew about it. Was it something the Navy needed to publish to the general population? No, frankly, they handed the information over to the Unified Command, who decided when they were going to release that information, and that was their job, not the Navy's.
Mark Martin joining us on stream, and let's welcome in the stream center here, WFLA's Jeff Patterson. Jeff is the one who introduced. We have Jeff to thank for Mark's 5+ hours yesterday on stream. And
that's amazing, actually. Thank you.
You're
very
in
much,
trouble
Mark.
now, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
You're in trouble now.
Yes, sir. And I think we've established how I'm going to repay that. So, anyway, I can't thank Mark enough for participating in this. But JB, I also just came back from talking to another friend of mine who is Wayne Fernandez, who spent 30 years in the U.S. Navy on 6 different submarines. He was the commanding officer of the USS Skate, which was the 3rd nuclear-powered submarine in U.S. history. And one of the things I was talking to Wayne about is just what Mark was talking about, the Navy's capability of listening and how they were able to hear this rather catastrophic noise. Wayne was not surprised at all that the Navy detected what we now know to be the implosion of the submersible. And there's some things he couldn't tell me because they're still classified. But I asked him at what level or how closely will they able to pinpoint the location of where the sound came from. And that he couldn't tell me precisely. He would only say that they knew it was in the vicinity of the Titanic. He says that they knew something happened, but not exactly what happened. But as Mark just said, the Navy dutifully reported it to the Unified Command, so they had that as part of their operating knowledge. And I believe it probably helped them launch the ROV that ultimately then found the tail section and other debris, the debris field, that led to the conclusion that there had been a catastrophic failure of the Titan. The other thing that I talked to Wayne about was what caused the failure. And Wayne admittedly only knows what he has gleaned from watching coverage of this. You know, he's not as involved, frankly, as Mark is, because Mark knows people on board the support ship. But Wayne says it's not just one dive that created this catastrophic failure. It's the cumulative effect of deep dive after deep dive. And in fact, James Cameron spoke about this yesterday, is that, you know, it was a carbon fiber and titanium structure that was made up this capsule underneath. And so Cameron says, you know, perhaps micro fissures of water intrusion into those 2 different types of surface that, you know, after dive led to the catastrophic failure. So, you know, a little bit of just taking facts that they've heard and putting it all together. But, you know, Wayne is an engineer and he commanded a sub, so I value his opinion.
Of course.
And he's very well respected in the submarine community.
That's good to know, and I'm sure that means a lot coming from Mark as well. So we're here in the Stream Center. Jeff just coming in because, Jeff, you are putting together your report right now. Now, I have a preview clip loaded up here. So your story tonight is going to air on WFLA News Channel 8. It's going to then be available on WFLA.com. It's going to be fascinating. But the clip that we're about to hear, what exactly did you ask?
So I had just asked Wayne about what caused this, and he talks about this cumulative impact or cumulative effect of going down time after time. Now, one thing I have to stress when I'm talking about this is I don't think we know, at least we don't know, how many times did the Titan go down. I'm sure that will come out subsequently, but right now I don't have a number for you. But I can tell you that what we're hearing from people who do have expertise in this is that multiple dives would have had an impact.
Let's take a listen.
Submarines are designed for a certain depth to operate, an operating depth, and then they have a crush depth. Obviously, the crush depth was exceeded. If they had a leak into the pressure compartment, then it would have flooded instantly and equalized the pressure. The fact that it imploded tells me that it had exceeded crush depth and the whole thing failed at the same time. Now, if you look at structure of metals and materials, if you take called fatigue stress, if you take a tin can and start bending the top back and forth, eventually it's going to break. So it's so many times you have to bend it. Same way, if you take a pressure cylinder vessel underwater, it'll be compressed by the sea pressure back and forth a lot of times. And you're talking about a lot of pressure. So it was probably not, my only guess is probably not designed for that number of cycles of compression and decompression. And being an engineer, that's what I believe may have happened.
So the U.S. Navy has obviously defined regulations and parameters for how deep submarines can go and how many times they can go to that depth, because that's critical. You know, if you're talking about this continued compression and decompression, the stress, like Wayne said, a really good analogy he gave there was just like, you know, twisting back and forth the top of a tin can. Eventually, it'll break, and that's what happened.
So, Mark,
what happens as he was talking about that crush depth? Obviously, it was designed for the depth that it was going to. It had made that trip repeatedly. The problem is that as he was explaining, that crush depth becomes shallower and shallower the more dives that you make, because of the stresses of contraction and expansion of various materials as they're subjected to pressure, and then that pressure is released, which is part of the whole classification. It's why they have to go through testing. The Navy subs, the commercial subs, have to go through testing every so often. Actually, with the commercial subs, every so often they're completely stripped down and everything is tested. Whatever needs to be rebuilt is rebuilt, so you can get back to that original strength.
That's very interesting. So Jeff is working on this report for tonight on WFLA News Channel 80. I'm sure, Jeff, you have a few more minutes just to hang out with us here in the Stream Center, and then I know that you're going to be preparing that report for our evening newscast tonight. Jeff, we're asking this question to everybody on screen. We're also asking it to everybody watching wherever you're watching from, and we're going to start to animate your comments on screen very shortly here, but we're asking, what is your top unanswered question? And we're going to bring in all those hashtag comments on screen in just a moment. I want to hear from Walt as well. I'm going to ask him the same question. But Jeff, before we lose you, you're as you've been covering the story for days now, and you have, of course, a lot of contacts when it comes to the deep sea exploration world. What's your number one unanswered question at this current stage with where things stand?
You know, how many dives had they made?
Right.
And then what kind of inspection had they gone through? You know, I think I have to say at this point, deep sea exploration is inherently dangerous, but a lot of really good science comes from it, you know. And Erica Moulton, who I spoke to yesterday, made a really good point about this, in that, you know, the people who paid to be on this submersible are helping to fund some really good scientific research. You know, maybe going down to the Titanic isn't really great scientific research, but the money that they're paying is leading to other, you know, people being able to do what they do so that we can learn more about the deep sea. The deep sea has not been explored to the extent of even what the moon has been done. You know, there's a fraction of the science that has gone into it. So every time they go down, every time somebody pays to go down, it helps other scientists do their work. Because like Erica said, you know, we want to learn a lot about whales, but whales aren't writing a check. So somebody has to write the check so that we can find out about this. Now, certainly the people who were on board that submersible had been told that, you know, they had to sign a long waiver saying it had not been inspected by outside sources. They knew that it was dangerous. And so that kind of danger is there, as is, you know, space exploration. But, you know, I for one think we need people to do that kind of work.
You know, it's so interesting to hear. I was watching as Mark was was shaking, or nodding, I should say, rather nodding his head, talking about how. Mark, you want to just kind of jump in because I saw your reaction when Jeff was speaking there.
We know more about the surface of Mars than we know about 80% of the ocean floor below 10,000 feet.
Wow.
And the ocean covers 72% of the planet. And the vast majority of it is deeper than 10,000 feet. And Erica, who is also a very close friend of mine, is absolutely right. You know, these people paying these prices funds some other research. You know, and again, my biggest question is what feature or what item caused the failure, caused it to implode. And it is inherently dangerous, Jeff. You know, I've been doing this pretty much my entire adult life. Been lucky a couple of times. Been lucky enough to have some smart people when I did some stupid things around. It is inherently dangerous. There are ways to mitigate that, and that's maybe a discussion for later, or you know.
And I think that towards the end of the stream, what we're going to try to do is discuss exactly just how much is going to be learned from this, not just this week, but in the subsequent weeks, months, and perhaps years as more is understood about what went wrong down there. But we have to let Jeff Patterson go. Jeff, we really appreciate it. I promised I would get you out on time so that you can continue working on your report for our newscast tonight. Jeff, we always, I know Mark appreciates you. We appreciate you, of course, as well. Veteran here at WFLA for many, many years.
Mark, veteran translates to old, but thank you. All right. Thank you guys very much.
Jeff Patterson joining us here in the Stream Center.
I had to get that dig in, didn't you?
Yeah.
Jeff, good to see you again.
All right, sir.
All right. Jeff Patterson, catch him tonight on your NBC station here in Tampa, Florida, WFLA News Channel 8. And then his report, you can find it afterwards on WFLA.com. Next up, Walt Buteau, WFLA Senior Investigator. Walt, your top unanswered question.
You know, I have to go with the what, when, where, why, how, and all that. And I know we heard, you know, that we have the catastrophic sound, the implosion. We know, but I would like to know, and I even my wife talked about it. We talked about it last night. I want to know when it happened, with some precision, and then also where in the journey. I know we have theories, but I think that is the human element to me. Is that when. You know, how far in, and also what sort of were there any signals? We hear now that maybe they were dropping weight. Yeah. That was obviously a moment to, for lack of a better word, panic if you're in that vessel, I think, and hopefully. But you want to know, like I said, when did it happen, and where in the journey? At what point in the journey did it happen?
So I'll share my unanswered or my top questions, and I have to. I've been thinking about this. I have to separate this by kind of my professionally from a journalist standpoint, and then from a human being standpoint. I'm going to try to answer this in two ways. From a journalist standpoint, from a reporter standpoint, I wanted to know. I still, of course, I want to know how could this have been prevented. That is my number one question. You know, we were talking a little bit about that yesterday, Mark. We were talking about different things that perhaps could have been done or things that could have been in place, and we didn't get too deep into the, and look, some news organizations and a lot of different headlines across the country. You're going to see a lot of people now coming forward now that it's the day after and saying, and sharing their experience, and by association, some people are pointing, fingers at perhaps this technology or this person or this design or this decision that was made, as far as the actual Titan submersible itself. I'm thinking about how this could have been prevented, and that's the journalist side of my brain talking. As far as just being a human being, I'm thinking about, of course, the families, the loved ones, but I'm thinking about I can't help. It's almost a tick. I can't help but think about what the final moments were like. I can't. It's like it's in my brain. I can't help but think about if Mark, based on what you're hearing and their attempts to drop weight, and if something went wrong down there, the fear that set in, especially for the three people who were paying to be passengers on this journey. I'm thinking about how scared they might have been, especially 19-year-old Suleiman Dawood, who, of course, was there with his father. The NBC report comes out last night as well, talking about the reports that have come out since we were last on stream. Suleiman Dawood, according to his family, was terrified and, just to paraphrase, had hesitancy about going on this journey, but that he was going to be with his father. And let's not forget, this past Sunday, Father's Day.
Right.
And makes this all the more gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. I'm not entirely sure. This is going to sound like a dumb question, but I know that Father's Day is very much celebrated here in the United States.
Right.
I don't know
if that's celebrated where.
Whether or not that's a bit as big of a deal around the world as it is here in the United States. But here in the United States, Father's Day. Mark, you're a dad, right? Walt, you're a father. Father's Day, I know, a special day.
A made-up holiday.
Made up.
That's
made
not
up.
celebrated. Is that the holiday we're talking about?
Yeah,
No,
that's well,
a little salty.
Yeah.
A little salty. Sorry. No, but you're right. I mean, it made up or not. It's a good question about is it celebrated everywhere, but yeah, that adds that bit of just heart-wrenching sort of detail to this.
Yeah, father and son. Can you imagine the Dawood family? Over the course,
I think to go, JB, I think to go to both of your concerns, Walt, your concerns are when and where. And that relates closely to my number one question of what element failed to cause this. And it may take finding that out before we know where and when exactly in the descent this implosion happened. But we also might be able to find out the where and when pretty quickly from the acoustic recordings that have been made. And as they're more fully analyzed, we may be able to get, we may be able to get a rough depth. We may be, we should be able to have a GMT timing on it. So I think the people that are in charge already know the when. Now, where was the vehicle in its descent when it happened? We should be able to find out relatively soon. But again, the answer to that question may not come until we find out what element it was that failed.
Mark, out of curiosity, and I say situations like this, I don't know if there are many, but I've covered.
Fortunately, they're few.
Right. So I've covered plane crashes, and I was talking to JB about this, where the entire and one over where some of the debris field included the Atlantic Ocean. And I remember toward the end of that investigation, they had pieced the entire plane basically together by bits and pieces. It was remarkable, just the work that went into that. I'm sure some public folks would have found things on the shore, given them to the NTSB. But in a case like this, where the debris field is underwater, does the investigation involve piecing it together so that we can determine the why in this case, what failed?
Yeah, JB and I had a discussion about this yesterday, and that's kind of exactly what I explained. Is very much like an aircraft crash. Those ROVs are going to go down. Now we know they're in pieces. My presumption, based on my experience, is that the vessel that's going to do the salvage will probably be putting recovery baskets down, which look like shipping containers that are cut in half and made out of mesh. They'll lower them down on the crane. The ROVs will pick up the pieces that are small enough for them to pick up. They'll hook up the crane to the larger pieces. They'll put them in those baskets and they'll bring them up. And once they have everything that they can find, once they're once they're satisfied that they've recovered every usable piece of evidence that they can, and that any more searching is doesn't meet the risk reward kind of matrix for it, then they'll come up. My bet is that they'll go to some big warehouse and they'll start putting it back together.
Yeah.
With the pieces that they have, and hopefully there's enough pieces. And maybe if there aren't enough, maybe if there is a particular section missing, that might actually be the clue to, oh, that's what failed. That's why it's not here. Because
that's interesting.
That's the element that gave up. So now it's in such small pieces, we're never going to find it. So and that happens with aircraft as well. Oh, we have everything from this wrecked airplane except this part. And it would make sense that if this part was missing, then the plane crashed. So it's kind of the same mentality. They're going to go through a very similar process. To JB's question of how long were they panicked? Three of them really didn't have much idea of what was going on or what to expect. So how long was it before they decided they needed to drop ballast to the point of implosion? Maybe that was a minute and a half. Maybe it was 4 minutes. Maybe it was 20 seconds. We don't have a timeline yet. If it was less than a couple of minutes, those three probably didn't have time to get into a panic mode because they didn't realize how dire the situation might have been. Okay, they know that we're trying to drop ballast, but okay, we're supposed to be able to drop ballast. So by doing that, maybe we fix what's wrong. And then, at some point in the relatively near future, it all went dark. So, there's a good possibility that they may have been concerned, but not had time to get into panic mode yet. That's what you hope anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of hope, I hope that for these families, I hope that something, the tiniest of memento, any trinket, any item, any object could be salvaged from the bottom that would give any comfort to these families, a certain belonging that they had on them, anything at all. But we'll talk more about salvage, and we'll talk a little bit more about the process going forward, the investigation. We want to open now our #HeyJB, Walt and Mark Q&A, if you will. But really what we're going to do is we're going to start by asking you now at home, wherever you're watching from. You can start punching it in now. Your top number one unanswered question. What do you want to know about this? There's reports coming out left and right. There might have been reports published in the last 25 minutes, really, since we've been on stream, 25 minutes plus, whatever it's been. Reports are coming out from all over the place, globally, international media, all now, publishing different things. We're trying to keep up with all the reporting that's being done out there. But folks, what is your number one unanswered question? Walt, as I look for some comments, anything that catches your eye?
I would like to ask one more question of Mark. So in an implosion situation, what sort of damage, other than the vessel breaking apart, are pieces destroyed in an implosion situation?
Oh, absolutely. If you think about an implosion, it's the exact opposite of an explosion. All that energy is in the center in an explosion, and then it bursts apart because there's less energy outside of it than there is in. An implosion is different. All of the energy is on the outside, so when that pressure hull gives, it all rushes in. Maybe a good analogy to this is when submarines shoot torpedoes at ships, modern submarines, modern torpedoes, modern ships. They don't shoot that torpedo to punch a hole in the side of the ship. What they do is they shoot that torpedo to explode at some distance under the keel of the ship. So that explosion pushes all of that water out of the way. Now you've got a big air bubble.
Wow.
And the energy of all of that, right? So now the middle of the keel sinks because there's not as much pressure under it. Then all of that water comes rushing back in to fill that void, and it sends the pressure in the other direction. So it's really a very violent, and an implosion is very much the same. Shreds and shards of equipment and parts of the hull are going to be, flying at each other.
Let's get to the first question that we've got on screen, because it's one that I've seen multiple times. And David Pogue, who went on this journey, went aboard the Titan Submersible and reported on it for CBS News. Dreamcatcher wants to know, #KJB, #KMark, #Walt. David Pogue said that when he went on the sub in 2018, one of the bolts that went into locking them in was missing. Thoughts? Could it have been this that caused the implosion? Dreamcatcher is joining us from Great Britain, based on the emoji there at the end, I believe. And I want to, before Mark, I know you want to hop in here about this. I'm sure you've heard by now the 17 of 18 bolts. I want to read the quote that I have here from People Magazine. This is David Pogue speaking to People, saying, quote, "They use rusty construction pipes as ballast. I remember that you are sealed into the sub from the outside. There are 18 bolts around the hatch, and the crew bolts you in from the outside. And I remember it was odd that they put in only 17 of the 18 bolts. The 18th one is way up high, and they don't bother with that one. They say it makes no difference, but, little things like that." End quote from David Pogue. What do you make of that, Mark?
No, I don't think that that's going to be really a viable issue as far as causing the implosion, because that dome fits up against a titanium ring that holds it in place. So the pressure is going to hold that in. That 18th bolt might have made a difference if the pressure was coming the other way. But it's, the deeper you go, the more sea pressure you have pushing that front dome onto that mating ring on the hull. So, do I understand, the theory of not putting in that 18th bolt? Yes, but why was it engineered to use 18 bolts and we're only using 17? But I don't think that realistically would have caused the implosion.
Okay, that's good to know, because a lot has been made of that online. Walt Buteau has to go back to.
Can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
So yeah, with that comment of a lot of things being made of certain things online, we kind of had this discussion about the controller yesterday. For your audience, we discussed this yesterday. There are fingers being pointed and criticisms being made, some of which I agree with and some of which I don't. Some of those are being made by people who I have known for a long time and I respect and are very good at what they do. And some of them are being made by people who just don't have a damn clue. And what I would ask you to do is try and sift through that. If the person you're listening to doesn't have deep submergence experience, doesn't have deep ocean experience, salvage experience, isn't a submariner, is not somebody who has experience in either operating or engineering a manned submersible vehicle, I don't care how many books they've read, they don't know crap. And their speculations that's exactly what their speculations are worth. If you're going to listen to people that have some sort of credentials. And I may be the least qualified out of all the experts that are out there, opening their mouths. But I would really encourage you to be careful about who you listen to and what it is they're saying.
That is great advice.
We're just nodding. We were nodding over here.
For the internet in general,
nodding.
Because you're right. I mean, and I'm obviously not an expert in this or in much of anything, and we that's why we go to experts. But yeah, it must be galling to you to see this. With the experience you have, and we're not going after Dreamcatcher here.
No. In fact, we'll put Dreamcatcher away. We'll come back to the comments and
But you really have to.
That's not a slam on any individual.
No. But
I've seen so much stuff online that's like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
And it's not, and it happens with other stories as well.
Oh yeah.
I'm not talking about questions necessarily. I'm talking about blatant statements where people say things and you have to take it with a grain of salt, especially with something like this, unless, as you said, they're an expert. And I would advise the same thing on other news stories.
Yeah, and let me provide some context here. It's called the armchair expert, right? I mean, that's a term that is thrown around quite a bit. But
there's so many of those.
A lot of it now is click-seeking behavior as well, and people that are looking to gain an audience, and people that are looking by throwing out what claims to be some expert theory or opinion, or to Mark's point, I read this book, I know about this. And as Mark is saying, with certain subjects, certain topics, maybe reading a book and understanding gives you really quite a good amount of knowledge to be able to speak on that subject. But Mark, if to kind of summarize your point, what you're saying is if you haven't been down there, you just don't know.
Or if you're not, and I know plenty of engineers whose opinion I respect, who've never actually set foot in one that was underwater.
Right.
They might have sat in it on deck, and I respect their opinion. But if you don't have hands-on experience, I'm not going to come on here and talk about aviation and the structural integrity of the fuselage of an aircraft, because frankly, I don't know anything about it. Now, if you want to talk to me about the structural integrity of a submarine hull, I'll talk to you all day long. But that's kind of, just because I read a book about something, it needs to be the people that do this kind of stuff for a living or have done this stuff for a living in the past. You're not seeing Tom Detweiler and Don Walsh and Jim Cameron and some of those other guys out there tweeting statements and putting on Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram and whatever other social media platforms that I'm not familiar with are out there. The guys who really know what they're doing are not making, pardon the pun, but wild ass assumptions or speculation.
Well, I know you wanted to hop in.
So I've got to run here, JB, but I do have one question. And by the way, I love experts and I love this show because I learn something when I sit here.
Yeah.
Like today.
That's how I feel every day.
I am obsessed with Mars, like to the point of my children don't want to hear it anymore. I really am. And to hear that we know more about the surface of Mars than we know about, is it 80% of the ocean floor, is a fascinating statement. Mark, I know we don't know what we don't know, but what might we learn from that other 80%? Any thoughts on that? I know, what could we learn from the rest of the 80%?
There are dozens of species of marine life that we discover every year. This is 2023.
Wow.
It was 8 or 9 years ago before we ever saw a live giant squid in the ocean. These things are 80 to 120 feet long with their legs.
So the pictures that we see of squids are generally of squid is not. They're
not giant squid,
right?
Oh,
giant
talking
squid.
About,
yeah.
But we catch squid. We eat calamari all the time. But giant squid that are 80 to 120 feet long, we never saw one in its natural habitat until 8 or 9 years ago.
Wow.
Bob Ballard figured out in geez, I don't remember what year it was that he went down to the hot vents. But until that point, it was sometime in the 80s, mid 80s. Until that point in time, everybody on the planet knew that all life on the planet needed photosynthesis to survive. And in that instance, when we saw crabs and shrimps and tube worms in these vents where the temperatures were in the 700 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit, they were living on chemicals. It was chemosynthesis. We're talking, 1985, before we ever figured that out about life forms on the on the planet. Giant squid. We still haven't seen very many of them, but if we would at least seen a couple. But it's only been in the last 8 or 9 years before, So every year, Erica's comment about funding deep ocean research, and I know that for a fact that this is very close to Erica's heart, is that we discovered dozens of new life forms in the deep ocean every year.
Wow.
Every year. There's thousands of life forms out there that we have no idea even exist.
So Atlantis might be real.
Could be.
Why are you laughing, JB?
Could be.
I mean, anything is possible.
I'm learning about you here today in the Stream Center. I didn't know that you were a big Mars fanatic.
Yeah, I love Mars.
And what was it? 450 years ago, we all thought the Earth was flat.
Kyrie Irving still does, but that's another story.
Oh man, you better get out of here before you get. Well, hold on. Did you want to stick around for this one? We were talking
I love this
about
question.
this.
I do love this question.
Because
yes, I agree.
You and I were talking about this off stream.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that Walt here hears Mark's answer, and we can all talk about this, because you and I, being in a very visual industry, we are very curious as to whether or not any will ever. First of all, if any camera footage will ever be salvageable, and also would it ever see the light of day? I would imagine, of course, it would be part of the investigation, but to the idea of camera footage being recovered is the question, the hashtag HJB question from Eric Peterson in our comment section. What do you have to say to that, Walt? Excuse me, Mark.
That actually, I think, is a two-part question. And question number one is, if the camera was inside the personnel sphere, I doubt there's going to be anything salvageable from it. I do know that, or I think I know, that there was one external camera mounted to the vehicle. There might have been more, but I'm pretty sure there was at least one that was mounted to. Now, if the pressure casing for that camera survived the implosion, then the information inside that camera should still be accessible. That's a big if. I don't know how big the pieces are. I don't know what's been. They've been recovering now for a day, so I don't know what pieces are on deck. I don't know what pieces are in recovery baskets still sitting on the bottom. I can tell you that if they find a camera that's in an intact subsea housing, that ROV is coming to the surface as fast as it can and getting it on deck so that whatever's inside of that can be processed.
JB and I were actually talking about, and my fascination or not fascination, my curiosity into the ROV operator. First of all, is it one person operating the ROV? And then what is the moment like?
Right.
Whether we see the tail, whether we see the
video,
I have
a lot of experience with that.
Whether we see the tail video or not, eventually, I don't know, because I'm sure there's video of that. But what is that?
Probably will.
We probably will. I figured that. What's the moment like? Even as the ROV operator, you're hoping probably for the best, but then you approach it, and it must just be a expletive filled
we were talking about
when I made the transition from predominantly manned vehicles to predominantly ROVs. Work class ROVs typically have a 3-man crew that works 12-hour shifts. So you'll have 2 operators, 2 pilots, pilot technicians, and a supervisor. one of those pilots flies the vehicle, controls the movements of the vehicle. The co-pilot or the other pilot technician is monitoring the screens that the pilot, because there's so many screens, the pilot can only watch so many. He's focused on making sure he doesn't get the tether wrapped around something, or he doesn't run into something, or he doesn't hit the bottom, or whatever. And then the co-pilot is monitoring the other screens. He's monitoring the sonar as well as the flying pilot is. And he's also going to be the guy that operates, if they're going to use both manipulator arms. If the flying pilot's really good, he's going to fly and operate one of those arms, depending on whether it's a 5 or 7 function, really technical stuff. The other pilot is going to operate that arm. And that's what they're going to pick up. And I search for shipwrecks for a living nowadays. And I can tell you that every time, and I'm the offshore manager or the salvage master, so I'm standing behind the supervisor, but I'm looking at the same screens. And I'll tell you that I get this, pardon me, the same feeling now that I got the first time. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's a your heart races. We found it. If you're looking for something and you actually find it, and that going down, I'm looking for something, and my chances are 50-50 at best that I'm going to find it.
50-50.
And then it comes into my camera shot. Yahoo! Wow.
JB, I gotta run.
Typically, followed in an instance like this, followed by oh crap.
Yeah.
Okay. But great.
Right.
Outstanding that we found it, but
this
it's in
means,
pieces.
Yeah.
Mark, I just want to say I appreciate you substituting that 4-letter word for some other 4-letter words that you could be saying
Which
on
probably
stream
is the actual
here.
one used.
There are a lot of people out there who know me who are watching. That's the biggest comment I have got from this podcast, is that I can't believe you can go more than 27 seconds without being bleeped. Because that's a really rare occurrence.
One of the others on this, one of the other people on this stream may also have friends who would suggest the same thing when I'm on TV, but I just gave it away. Mark, it was great meeting you. Fascinating, man. I really fascinating. What you do actually for a living, I find fascinating, even though I am obsessed with Mars. But your expertise your expertise in a situation like this is appreciated, right? And really,
oh my God,
as someone who loved Jacques Cousteau, and those adventures.
Meeting Captain Cousteau 3 times were 3 of the highlights of my life. It really was. And
awesome.
Walt, I thank you. I lived in Tampa until last September. I watched FLA. I've seen a number of your stories. You always do a great job.
Thanks, Mark.
Your research is solid.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And I'm fairly critical of that, as
Awesome.
we've recognized.
And hey, and let's go out and whatever you and Jeff were talking about, there was some payment. I'd like to know more about that off camera. But also I'd love to go find Atlantis at some point with you, because I'm a believer now.
From everything that I understand, alcohol will be involved.
What a shock!
I think JB is going. I'm not sure who's paying yet, but hopefully it's not me.
I think it's got to be Patterson. It's got to be Patterson. Patterson's benefited the most from your expertise.
I don't know. I got 5 hours with Mark.
I know I'm not paying. Hey, nice to meet you. I got to run, JB.
Yep.
Great, Walt. Thanks again.
All right, man.
Walt Buteau, WFLA senior investigator. Catch him, of course, on air, online, all over the place. WFLA's 8 on Your Side team with Walt Buteau, Masa Saidi, and Shannon Benkin of Better Call Benkin here at WFLA News Channel 8. Let's continue the conversation. But before I do, Mark, we're back. It's the 2 of us again. Before I continue the conversation here, I want to be very cognizant of your time. I had a general idea for how long we would be going on stream. We are not doing another 11 hours today. I can promise you that, folks. But Mark, your schedule looks like what exactly as far as the next hour or so?
I'm fine. I don't have. I had some plans midday that turned wet.
Yeah.
I think I'm fully dry everywhere now. Finally, I'm gonna have to go wipe down my bike. But no, I'm good. I don't have anything planned for the rest of the afternoon. Actually,
All right.
I answered all of my comments and emails, and I tried to do. I really, for those of you out there, I tried to do Instagram. I'm gonna need some training.
Someone. Well, you have daughters though, Mark. The daughters.
Yeah, but they're in Tampa, and they're in their late 20s or late teens, early 20s, and they don't have time to teach dad how to use.
Oh, come on. No?
They work hard, they're good, productive citizens. They're out there and they laugh at how big of a tech tart I am.
Someone
maybe one of them is watching right now, and I can see her chuckle.
Well, when you come up to Tampa to hang out with us, with me and Jeff and others, maybe we can figure out maybe you and I will be sitting over a beverage and looking over how to do Instagram, even though I self-admittedly am not the number one. You need to talk to an influencer or somebody
and
like that.
I think I have a Twitter account too, but I think it got opened like 4 years ago, and I don't think I've ever been able to figure out how to open it back up. So I don't.
It's refreshing almost to talk to somebody who that is not their number one priority. Believe me. Mark Martin joins us here on stream, and as a reminder, folks, I really hope that a few of these offbeat moments, and we know that the subject matter is dense. We know that we're talking about a tragedy here, but sometimes some of these offbeat moments, especially with what we do with live streaming when we are on camera for hours, we don't have commercial breaks. You're seeing something very raw as far as the range of human emotion. So there are times on stream where we'll be sad, it'll be somber or serious, or and then we will smile and talk about things also as well that are more positive. This is live streaming. That's what this is all about. So hopefully people understand that as far as our streams.
And if I could interject for just a second,
of course.
My personality at times during this somber event may seem flippant, but I will tell you that all of my submarine brothers that are watching this, and all of my deep submergence brothers and sisters that are looking, and we do consider each other brothers and sisters, because it's a very tight community where you have to have the ultimate trust in the other people that are in that vessel with you, because literally everybody's life depends on everybody else. The way that we deal with this kind of stress is that we joke. It may seem a little morbid, but I will tell you that any submariner that you ever meet is going to have a sense of humor that's a little different than everybody else's, and part of that is that's how we deal with the stress. Is you have to find something that's going to make you smile, otherwise you're going to cry. So please don't take my attitude as flippant. It's just the way people like me deal with these kinds of situations.
Yeah, and it's only natural over the course of, again, Mark was on stream with us yesterday for 5+ hours, which, again, and I'm going to tweet some more about this later tonight, about a little bit more about behind the scenes of yesterday and how everything went, because our coverage reached a lot of people. But Mark was originally scheduled to be with us for an hour, and took an additional 4+, and even there was a cable news network that I'm not going to name, but people who remember from yesterday, that you didn't appear on, right? Something happened where, and then you're
I did the first time. I didn't appear the second time.
Right, and you just came back to us.
They were too late getting back to me.
And then you came right back here.
Yeah, because they were, I knew you were coming back on, and they were late getting back to me, so I clicked on, and about 5 minutes after I clicked on with you, they called me and said, okay, we're ready. And I said, well, sorry,
Well,
you're late.
I will try to get you out in time today for happy hour, sir. So what we're gonna do?
It's raining like hell here. I'm not going out again. I have good scotch and nice food in the refrigerator. I'm not going. I'm not leaving again. I've already been soaked once. I'm in for the night.
I'll tell you what, Mark. Let me explain to our audience and you what's going to happen. Okay, I just booked one more guest, a legal expert, and I'll just say it's a legal expert, and you'll be able to find out more at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, a legal expert is going to be joining us, and it's a legal expert that that our stream audience will recognize. And we're going to talk about the legalities of this going forward. Now, Mark, you are invited to hang out for that conversation, or if the whole legal side of this story is not really your cup of tea or your other beverage of choice, you are of course more than welcome to say farewell. So it's totally up to you.
I will probably hang out for at least part of it, because I actually, because I do commercial salvage for a living now, I actually am pretty interested in some of the legal aspects of what's going on.
Well,
so
then you are.
I might learn something.
Our Zoom room is always open to you, sir. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's go back into now the subject matter of the stream. Mr. UC, its comment has been up for maybe 10 minutes. We need to get to this one next because it pertains to what we were just talking about. Mark, you and I are gonna do about a 45-minute just answering people's questions, or doing our best to, or at least spotlighting their top unanswered questions. And then we will, of course, bring on a legal expert and friend of the stream onto the program as well. So let's go now back to the hashtag HeyJB and Mark questions and comments. Mr. UC, it says, based on, again, the conversation we were having about video down there and perhaps video and cameras documenting the moment or what happened during the descent on Sunday. I'll read the comment. Mr. UC, it says, hashtag HeyJB, I know it's early in the investigation. Has anyone mentioned searching cloud storage for images or video? Now, is video being transmitted up to the surface because that's the only way that it would be stored remotely?
No. ROVs typically stream live video up to the surface. That's how they're able to fly them. But it's also how they get their power and how they can stay down for days or weeks at a time. Manned vehicles don't have a tether. So without a tether, while there are some technologies in development that hopefully will allow transmission through the wireless transmission through the water column, those technologies do not yet exist. So there wouldn't be. That's why you're going to have to find the SIM card. You know, if that exterior camera is still intact and still in its pressure case, then hopefully you can pull the memory card out of that and process that. But again, if the pressure casing has imploded as well, that's probably not going to do you any good. But there's no way to get it to the cloud.
Okay, that's of course very useful. I've just confirmed. So let me explain. Another 40 minutes of 40. No, it's going to be 45 minutes of spotlighting questions and comments, and then we're doing 30 minutes of the legal side with our legal special guest coming up at 4 o'clock. So our streaming coverage today will end at 4:30. We would go longer, folks. Please be understanding. We did nearly 12 hours of commercial-free coverage yesterday, so we're doing our very best to bring you this Friday edition to go over the unanswered questions and where this goes from here. Oh man, there's so many there. Okay, Brittany wants to know, hashtag HJB, will the video be released of them finding the parts? Walt was talking, but you said, yeah, you think the video will be released.
Yeah, at some point. I don't think you're going to see, you might see some pretty generic video clips that are released before the end of the investigation. But I think any of the video that's really going to tell you anything, any of the video that's going to be graphic, you're not going to see, at least for some time. I don't think you'll see any of the graphic video, if there is any. But
hold on, may I interrupt for a second? Because this also is comparable to, look, it's on a global level, and I get that this is a massive international story, but if there is pertinent video from a sheriff's office here in Florida, you might know this, Mark, of course, as well, being in Florida, they will blur that video or pixelate that video if there's anything that's insensitive, but they will still release it. Could that be also possible if there is something that the public shouldn't see?
It's possible.
Yeah,
it's possible. It's all gonna, any video that the investigation team deems worthy of release is going to be shown to the families before it's released. I mean, unless it's just, super generic. And there, as a courtesy, because this is so high profile, as a courtesy, I would expect the family members are going to see any video before we see any of it. But most of this video is going to be simply, and I'm sure, for me, my attitude towards it's a little bit different. It's not as interesting for me to watch them picking things up off the bottom as it is.
I can't imagine why.
Because it doesn't matter whether it's a piece of this or a piece of that. It's a piece. I got to pick it up. I got to put it in the basket. It's going to come up. When it comes up, I'll probably be interested in what it is. But for me, and again, it's because of what I do. My attitude towards that's a little bit jaded. I understand where watching an ROV's manipulator arms come out in front of it into the cameras and pick an object up off of the ocean floor would be exciting for a number of people. It's just not for me.
Right. I get it. Because this is your field of expertise. You've seen this. I can't even imagine how many times. But if there was
tens of thousands of hours of doing that,
if there was video that came out showing the arms in front of the unmanned, again, that's ROV, remotely operated vessel. If it's coming out and we're seeing the arms picking up pieces from the bottom, of course that circulates around the world, millions of views.
That video might come out very quickly.
Really?
Because it is relatively generic. So, as long as it's not a critical piece of the investigation, and this isn't a top secret spy plane that crashed. It's not a military vessel that sank. There shouldn't be anything secret about this investigation. So I think that you'll see a lot more video and a lot more information available to the general public than again, if this had been a military vessel or craft that sank, because then nobody's going to see anything until it's over, and then it's going to be washed pretty well.
Well, you're speaking my language, because people who watch WFLA Now enough or watch Hey JB enough to know that I'm a crusader for transparency, especially when it comes to our legal system and having cameras in courtrooms. I speak out about that quite a bit, about how there should be transparency. Not always. I understand that protection should be in place, but I am all for transparency. So without going on a rant, you're speaking my language, right. Mark. Let's get to the next question. Right. We've got all these questions, by the way, are coming in from multiple platforms: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We're going to try to get as many platforms involved here. So wherever you're watching from.
I was watching the replay from yesterday on the side of the screen. I don't understand how you can read any of that stuff. It was so fast that
It's not always that fast. Mark, you're popular. Let me just allow me to share that you are a popular guest. Somebody just commented a moment ago wanting to know if you could stream every day. That's how People are, I think
Can
it's
I
fair
get paid for it?
let me go talk. Let me walk about 80 feet in this direction and go talk to the people, the powers that be here at WFLA, and see if that's something that we can arrange. No, but in all seriousness, your authenticity is what is really resonating with people on stream, and I know
that's great. That's greatly appreciated. It's just, it's just the kind of guy I am. I'm not, there aren't any airs. I'm lucky to be where I'm at and in the position I am, and I have a lot of help getting here. I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. I am not the smartest guy in the room. So, and I'm in a room by myself. So, so I see the question: is the massive pressure down where the sub failed to go going to destroy the remains of the crew as well? Multi-part answer. First of all, the implosion is a very violent event. So the probability of there being intact bodies on the seafloor is almost non-existent. The pressure, I don't remember what it is down there. I could
we had some of our audience members putting it in the comment section yesterday. Yeah. So if you're rejoining us from yesterday, you remember what the pressure was down there, folks. Let us know in the comment section.
I'll give you a quick one. Hang on. It's a calculator. We're going to do the rough scuba. It's 12,500 feet times 44 equals it's 55,000 pounds right. Of pressure.
And the number that I saw yesterday was 20. I think it was 25,000. But okay. But here's the thing. I think people are also
because I put in feet and I should have just
but also too they didn't. An idiot. No, you're not an idiot. They didn't make it all the way down too, so their depth would have been
right. But where they're at now is at 12,500. Because they didn't make it all the way down before it imploded. But after it imploded, they made it all the way down. It's not like those bodies are floating in the water column. They sank.
Right.
The other part of that is the human body at the moment, the human body can't descend deeper than 1,500 feet. And for all of you members of the experimental dive unit that may or may not be watching, I'm just putting out what is generally published. The human body cannot withstand pressures deeper than 1,500 feet. You wear a hard hat helmet for diving as you're going deep because it keeps the pressure out of your cranial cavities. Okay. But the deeper you go, you still have cavities within your body. And once you get to 1,500 feet, the external pressure starts squeezing the body to the point where those cavities that might have been that big are now this big.
Wow.
So your body can't function. It's going to squeeze your liver. It's going to squeeze any soft tissues are going to start getting squeezed, not to mention the void cavities that are in your, in the thorax, that kind of thing. So that would happen on a dead body as well as a live body. So the bodies that are laying on the bottom there's an almost zero chance of them being intact. And if they are intact, they're going to be disfigured. It's grim, but it's life. That's the way physics works.
We have heard from various experts on other outlets, broadcast television that have been speaking and saying that the odds of finding human remains at that depth after all this time passing a period of 5 days, that the odds are extraordinarily slim. Would you agree with that assessment, Mark?
The odds of finding any human remains that have any flesh.
Yeah.
I excavated a wreck that was 350 years old. And when I moved the cannon, guess what was underneath it? A human skull. So there are, you'll find bones down there for, for some period of time, and the more time that's down there, the less chance that you'll even find bones. But once they hit actually even before they hit the seabed, technically they're part of the food chain. You've got fish, you've got squid, you've got crabs, you've got bacteria, you've got all kinds of things that are looking for food, and they're going to take whatever food they can find.
Shane wants to know, this is very interesting. Now talking about looking ahead a little bit with this particular question. #KJB, does Mark know if there's another company out there like OceanGate, since most of us had no clue about them?
Again, a multi-answered question. There are several companies out there that build commercial deep submergence vehicles, both for the tourism and the scientific industry. 3 of those 4 companies I have very close contacts with, and they are all top-notch. Their safety record is impeccable. They have all had the required inspections and classifications and all of those things. Are there people, possibly companies out there, that are building backyard submersibles? That was a pretty popular thing for a long time. When manned submersibles kind of fell out of favor for ROVs, back in the 80s and the 90s, manned submersibles are coming back because scientists have realized that instead of looking at a 2D screen, if I can actually get down there and look at that reef in 3D, or look at that, whatever I'm looking at in 3D, plus also have my other senses about me, the information that I gather is significantly better than looking at a 2D monitor with a feed from an ROV. But during that period of time, there were a lot of people that built backyard manned submersibles out of old propane tanks, out of, anything they could find that was in, and that whole propane tank mini sub thing was really popular. I mean, there were hundreds of those things made. No certification, and it was 2 guys and a welding machine, and in a backyard. And
now they're not going down to the Titanic with
that. No, they're not going down to the Titanic. They're going maybe a couple of 100 feet. But for the average guy who's never been deeper than 10 or 15 feet in the water and snorkel, or maybe 50 or 60 feet in scuba gear, if I can go down and spend 3 or 4 hours at 300 feet, that whole explorer thing in them gets satiated.
What was the propane tank submersible that was made? Was that here in Florida? I'm asking for a friend.
They were all over the place. They made them in Kansas, for God's sakes. They were made everywhere. They made them in Europe. They made them in Asia. They made them in the U.S. They were made everywhere, because once the first guy made it, and it wasn't that hard for everybody to copy what they wanted to do. Are there companies out there that are making vessels like OceanGate? Not that I'm aware of.
Quick PSA, please use your propane tanks for your July 4th grill out, and not making underwater.
We're talking about like the 500-gallon propane tanks, not the little, but yeah, it was quite popular for a while.
Let's continue to go through some of the questions and some of the comments while we have another half hour answering those questions and comments. We're going to continue beyond the half hour, but we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the legalities of this with our legal special guest coming on at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Wow, that question. Let me just bring this up just to make a point. I'm going to bring up this comment just to bring a point. Mr. Big Papa asking to both of us, are prices for this next excursion going to rise due to this event? I don't know if prices are going to rise. I don't know. Is this it for OceanGate?
Yes.
Yeah. So people who
I don't see it. I don't. I don't. And you know, I spent yesterday not doing any speculating, not doing any finger pointing, not doing any criticism. I don't see any scenario in which OceanGate, from a business standpoint, can survive this event. They have a couple of other subs. They don't dive nearly as deep as Titan. They do science and some tourist excursions. But I are there still going to be some people willing to get inside of an OceanGate sub? Probably. Are there going to be enough of them to sustain a business after the publicity that's going to happen from this event? I can't imagine. I can't imagine that. And that has nothing to do with the legal consequences that may or may not happen from this,
which we'll get into at 4 o'clock.
Right.
A reminder: among the 5, Stockton Rush, CEO and co-founder. So their CEO deceased in this tragic event, and so as far as OceanGate's future, I don't think that this question is really much answerable. I don't think that OceanGate's future looks very, very bright, to say the least, folks.
Now, on the other hand, maybe another answer to this question is those companies that we just spoke about that are still that still build both tourist and research submersibles. Are they going to take a bit of a hit for a little while? That's from the civilian side, probably. From the science side, I don't think there's going to be any institution that was thinking of buying one of their vehicles, and this is going to change their mind. Again, because they follow all of the accepted procedures and processes that have been laid out by the IMO, by MTS, by all of those. So I don't think it's going to affect that. Will it slow down their tourism business for a little bit? Yeah, maybe. But from a legal standpoint and an insurance cost standpoint, I don't think those other companies are going to be significantly affected by this event.
Mitch Flicks, right on point here as far as, do you think this will change regulations for diving to the Titanic? And let's be clear, this, and Mark, you correct me if I am wrong, but to my understanding, this, with what happened to the Titan submersible and this particular dive, this dive and what went wrong, I mean, we don't know if it has anything to do with the location or anything to do with the Titanic. This catastrophic event could have occurred anywhere.
Yes.
So
that's my belief. I don't think the fact that it happened over the Titanic has no real bearing on what happened to that vehicle.
So an eerie coincidence.
It could have happened anywhere. It could have happened off the coast of Florida. It could have happened in the Bahamas. It could have happened off of Maine. It could have happened off of Hawaii. It could have happened anywhere. The fact that it was over the Titanic had no real effect on what actually happened to that vehicle. Back to the will it change regulations? There is an organization, the US, Canada, and the UK have created an organization that basically manages access to the Titanic. It prevents just anybody from going down and being able to, pick up artifacts from the debris field. There was a company that owned the Titanic, the salvage rights to the Titanic. I don't think that actually exists anymore, but it might. But they don't dive the Titanic. But there are rules and regulations. You have to register with that organization before you make a dive on the Titanic. So do I think that some of the regulations will change? Yeah, I'm thinking that they're probably going to say, look, you can't dive on it unless you're in a classed submersible.
The ripple effect, if you will, is going to be significant, both from a regulation standpoint. I'm sure that different things are going to be considered to make sure that this never happens again, that future deep sea exploration is as safe as possible. And then to your point as well, on the private side, there is going to be this hesitancy that sets in with future people who would pay to be in a submersible to go see various underwater landmarks around the world. So
right. And on the commercial side, I will tell you that it's already heavily regulated. Right. There's a reason why we don't see this is an inherently dangerous operation. And there's a reason why there's dozens and dozens of these dives that are made every year, not necessarily Titanic, but throughout the world's oceans. There's dozens of manned submersible dives that happen every year. And it's been many, many years since there has been an accident or an incident or a event, whatever you want to call it. And the reason for that is that not only the regulatory bodies, but the people that advise those regulatory bodies, one of which is the Manned Vehicle Committee of the Marine Technology Society, are very stringent. It's like Tom Detweiler and Jim Cameron and Don Walsh all said yesterday on various interviews that, we obviously, those of us that do this have got that explorer bug. We know it's dangerous. We know when we get in there, we might not come back, but we've done everything that we possibly can to mitigate that risk. And we've calculated that, and we've decided it's okay. It's really nothing more than what you do when you get on an airplane. It's risky getting on an airplane. Is it worth the risk for you to get where you want to go on that airplane, for you to climb on that airplane? It's the same thing with me when I get in that vehicle and I want to go see or do something. Is the risk of me getting in that vehicle and something happening greater than me getting in that vehicle, getting to go what I want to do and come back? I can get from point A to point B. So it's now from the tourism side or the private side, what I can see happening here is significant insurance reform and increase. You're going to have to, the insurance companies are going to say, you have to have this, this, and this before we insure you. And I will make this comment. As far as I know, OceanGate was not able to get insurance on the Titan because it wasn't classed. I know that on my salvage ship, if it wasn't classed, I wouldn't be able to get insurance on it.
Part of the process.
It's part of the process. My own boat that I owned until a year ago, that when I was not offshore, playing, I would occasionally charter. I had to have commercial insurance on it,
sure.
and in order to do that, I had to have my captain's license, which is for vessels significantly larger than the one I owned. But I also had to have Coast Guard inspections. There were certain things that had to be in place before the insurance company would insure me to operate that vessel. So I see the insurance companies taking a big look at this. I can see them maybe tightening some regulations up, although I don't, as long as you're going to follow the regulations, I think they're appropriate already. but it might cost more, but again, this isn't going to affect the insurance companies because nobody's paying out on it as far as I know.
Wow. I mean, can't speak to life insurance policies for
that's a whole different,
whole different
that's a whole different
thing. Whole different
Yeah.
thing. Jules has
Right.
been on screen for a minute. Hashtag KJB. Mark, what happens to the window of the sub when doing a dive? Could that have been a factor? Because the window, the hull, and how it's all attached. And I think the average person, Mark, would look at that and think of it as a weak point. Is that necessarily true?
It can be, depending upon the design of the window. I have heard reported from credible sources on numerous news outlets that the window, the reason the director of operations was fired 2 years ago or 3 years ago was because he had a problem with the window because it was only rated to 1,300 meters instead of 4,000. If that's the case, and I believe that it was swapped out, but if that's the case, then that's the weak point. If you're going past 1,300 meters, and that's what the window's rated to, and typically the rating is anywhere from half to 2/3 of the breaking. So if it's rated to 1,000 meters, it ought to be able to go to 1,500 meters. If it's rated to 2,000 meters, it ought to be able to go to 3,000 meters before catastrophic failure. But it's also the design of the windows, which are typically in some sort of a cone shape, and the pressure holds them into the place. That the interior that you're looking through is a smaller diameter than the exterior of it, and that thickness is all based on how deep you want to go with the vehicle. How thick does this need to be able to withstand that pressure? And sometimes the window's 3 inches thick. Sometimes the window's 14 inches thick. It depends on how deep you want to go.
I want to ask you a question now for myself because of conversations that I have had with folks in my life over the course of this week regarding this story. And I don't know if this is going to, I would imagine this is going to, people are going to be, they're going to see what I'm getting at here. But I have, this has to do with the window. I have had people talk to me, Mark, and say, my goodness, I would never take that journey. And I go, oh, why? We ran a poll earlier this week on WFLA Now, and 81% of people said if the ticket were free, they wouldn't want to go down there. And it's not just because of risk assessment and risk management and the potential danger, but because of also there's a technology component. And Walt said this on stream earlier this week, and others in my life have said the almost exact same thing. If you're down there and you're looking through a small window, not everybody on the vessel can look through it all at once. It's small enough that it's meant to be viewed by one person, right? So you're taking turns.
On most submersibles, there's actually a design of submersible out there that has a dome so that everybody can see.
But on this one, it appears that, I don't want to, there might be room for multiple people, but as far as a prime viewing location, it's either one or I don't know if everybody is in that in the glory spot, if you will, of being able to see everything, right? But to the point that people have been making, if you have a 65-inch 4K big screen TV at home and you've got people like Jim Cameron going down to the depths and shooting unbelievably beautiful video of the wreck of the Titanic, and you can sit at home in your pajamas with a bowl of popcorn and see what that is like compared to this risky journey on the way down. For the explorers out there, the adventurers out there that would be hearing me right now, they would be rolling their eyes and saying, you don't know what you're talking about.
Did you just see that eye roll?
Right. I guess what I'm asking you is
I've done both.
Down there.
I have sat and watched Jim Cameron 3D motion picture video of places that I have been myself. on a big screen, on a 60-inch screen, on a different, right? It's not the same.
Wow. Okay. That's really what I wanted
It's
to ask
just
you.
not the same. There's no peripheral vision. There's no input from your other senses. And I understand your other senses, other than your hearing, are not really affected. You're at one atmosphere, but it's cold. That adds to the experience. The fact that it's cold, the fact that you can hear things outside of the sub, the fact that you are looking at that object in 3D is a feeling that you just cannot grasp. And that goes back to many years ago. I had a friend of mine that I worked with in the Navy, and I hired to work for me after I retired, and I was into a different industry. And his comment, because he had run ROVs in the Navy, he was a submariner and then went to ROVs as opposed to manned vehicles. And his comment to me was, "There's nothing that a manned submersible can do that an ROV can't." And I argued with him with that. And I said, and it actually took me getting him into a manned vehicle to be able to change his attitude, because he was so enamored with ROVs. And I'm like, it's 2D. You're sitting here in an air-conditioned control room in a $7,000 chair filled with electronics and joysticks, and you're looking at all these screens, and it's great, but you can't hear what's going on. You can't see it in 3D. You just don't get the feeling. And that's why scientists in the early 2000s decided they wanted to start going back in manned submersibles versus ROVs, was because just the personal information they could gather, the quality of that data was so much better than looking at a camera feed from an ROV on a 2D screen.
So you're saying that the
long way to answer that
real world? No. That's why we do long form streaming. So you're saying that the experience of being down there and seeing it and feeling it with all of your senses, not just your vision, but all of your senses, is that special versus seeing it, let's say, in a movie theater on an IMAX screen?
It's not comparable.
Wow.
Which is why the people like me do what we do. Some people climb mountains, some people fly fast airplanes, some people dive, right? What's the difference between sticking a camera underwater near a reef and watching the fish swim by, as opposed to you being in scuba gear at 60 or 70 feet down or whatever, and looking at that, being able to touch that reef, looking at that reef. But even if you can't touch the reef, just all of the senses. Do you have a different experience than if you're watching some documentary about underwater stuff that's been filmed underwater?
I get what you're saying. My dive experience is every time I come up, it's a rush. It's a rush that you get when I dove a shipwreck in the Bahamas last year, and even though I had done dives before, just you are humbled by the experience, and you come up and there is a rush, and you can't. Here's another thing that people don't know about diving.
You don't get that from watching a TV.
That is true. And it's what people don't know. It was something I really learned about. I'm a talker, right? People know that I'm a talker. You don't talk underwater. So one of the things I really learned about diving too is that when you do come up, what's that now?
I do, but it's because I have a comms mask.
Right. But for the average scuba diver like me, you're not talking, you're not really communicating underwater. I mean, other than your basic hand signals. But when you come up, all you want to do with the rush, all you want to do is talk about the experience. And
Absolutely.
versus obviously a movie theater when you have the person next to you, you elbow them and be like, oh my God, wow, that. But really quick follow up, and then we'll get back to the questions and comments. And it goes exactly to Beans here. Mark Zuckerberg with his VR. I know you're going to laugh. I knew you were going to laugh, but bear with me here. There's been tremendous advancements in virtual reality, augmented reality. Apple just announced their headset.
My nephew's got one, and I've put it on. And you know what? There's a saying: when I die, I want to slide into the pearly gates, dirty, torn up, bloody, sweaty, screaming, "Holy crap, what a ride." I don't want to show up there in a perfectly preserved body. You know, it's, they say, you only die once, but you live every day. And I guess that's just a mentality. I guess that's the mentality you have to do to do what we do. I guess it's why I ride a motorcycle and why I drive a fast boat, and
Life in the fast lane.
You only get so many seconds every day. It's not like the bank. You put 1 million, however many seconds there are in a day, but you put $1 million in the bank, and tomorrow you still got $1 million. You put 1 million seconds out there. Tomorrow, I start every morning with 0, and if I don't use those seconds or minutes or hours, I lose them. They're gone. I can't get them back. Was I sitting on my butt with my feet up watching television, or was I riding my motorcycle on a backcountry road, listening to the birds and smelling the smells from the flowers and the plants and what was I doing? Did I make use of those seconds and minutes and hours, or did I waste them? Because if you waste them, you don't get them back.
Folks, breaking news. Mark Martin will not be in line on Black Friday this holiday season purchasing a VR headset. You will not see that anywhere here in the state of Florida or beyond. I talk a lot. Chelsea talks.
Martin won't be in the line on Black Friday anywhere.
Mark Martin, retired U.S. Navy submariner, joining us. Look, as I mentioned, I talk a lot. Chelsea talks a lot. Chelsea talks a lot is one of our great moderators who make sure that our comment section is respectful and welcoming to all. We have moderators, Mark, that help us with the flow of the chat that you were referencing earlier. A lot of questions coming in, according to Chelsea, about the ballast. So let's just start to now.
So you get all this help. I see all those screens you have, and I'm just out here hanging on my own. I get it.
No,
okay.
Yeah. So a little help goes a long way in the live streaming world. Let's start to talk about the ballast system. And I think that there are people who, can you give us a very basic understanding of how that would have functioned and what could have gone wrong? And we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask you for kind of the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, it depends on the vehicle, right? Submarines use air and water. The boat floats if the ballast tanks are full of air. And when you want to submerge, you vent the air out, you fill them with water, the boat gets heavier, it sinks. And then you figure out how much water to air ratio you need and where in the boat you need it to keep that boat neutrally buoyant. And manned submersibles typically use syntactic foam as buoyancy so that they are positively buoyant. If they drop ballast, they're positively buoyant. I don't know about the construction of the Titan. I do know that they had used steel construction pipes as weight, and apparently they had to try and tilt the boat to one side or the other to get those to drop out of the holder. We know that they had this balloon type feature that was on a mechanical link in case they got in trouble, that it would float. But I don't know if that was a messenger buoy or if it was actually added ballast. I know that they could detach the landing skid, that square metal frame you see on the bottom of the vehicle. There was a hydraulic lever that they could use to drop that. and I know that they did have some ballast tanks that they could move some air and some water into, but I don't know how big they were. I don't know what the reserve ballast was, but that's what ballast is. Ballast is the more weight you have, the heavier you are. If you're submerging, you got to have a way to get rid of that extra weight. One of the emergency things we had on Dolphin, the world's deepest diving submarine, was we had a 22-ton releasable keel on the bottom that had explosive bolts in the control room. And if things went sideways and you were plunging, and we went to 5,000 feet on a routine basis, if we were getting into trouble, we could hit those, and that 22 tons of weight would drop off of the submarine.
What is the most common way, to Mega's comment here, what is the most common way to release the ballast? Is it computerized, or is it a physical mechanism on board?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. You're gonna have computerized or electrical ways to transfer air and water in and out of ballast tanks. Your backup systems are typically going to be manual. It's going to be a hydraulic lever. It's going to be a mechanical lever, that kind of thing. Because if you lose power, then if it's an electrically actuated system, it doesn't work because you don't have any power.
We only have 5 minutes left, so we're going to try to get to as many of these as possible. But 5 minutes for Mark and I in this one-on-one. We're going to transition to the legal questions with our legal special guest coming up at 4 o'clock, folks. But Joseph, so Mark, we're going to try to speed through these. Joseph says, #HJB, I believe that the noise that was heard was, as far as the banging noises, was the echo of the implosion, and the second and third banging or the shockwave reflecting off the sea floor. What's your opinion on that, Mark?
Joseph, I don't want to sound like I'm slamming you, but that's pure speculation.
Okay. But is that
the noise that was heard? We've already figured out that noise event was the implosion. It was heard by the Navy on a hydrophone of some sort, whether it was fixed or on a vehicle. That hydrophone registered the event. All of that other banging was either coming from the vessels in the search area or from the Titanic. Because again, the Titanic, unless you've been anywhere near it, you really can't comprehend how noisy that wreck is.
Wow. It makes sounds.
It's just, there's two massive sections and it's corroding, and there's big pieces of metal that are moving. And even if they only move a couple of inches, it's a piece of metal that weighs several tons. Think about the noise that makes on the surface when you hear two pieces of steel scratching against each other.
I'm just realizing, I'm not sure if I've ever asked you this just directly. Have you been down there to the Titanic?
I have not been on the Titanic itself.
Okay.
I have been very involved with the Titanic over the years. I was on the original expedition that went out to find it.
Wow.
The unit that I was with did all, because it was a cover story for the Navy going to look for the Scorpion and the Thresher and figure out what happened. So that's why the Navy was involved, and I was part of the deep submergence unit at the time. So we tested all the equipment that they were going to use out there.
Fascinating. I promise we would speed this up. Melissa, #KJB, would releasing ballast indicate they were trying to surface?
Yes.
Okay. Lorraine says, #KJB and Mark agree. Seeing the reef on screen is not the same as being down there. It's almost like being on a different planet.
So Lorraine's a diver.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lorraine has seen some things underwater. If that's the way, because I've always felt like going down underwater is feeling like being on another planet, or the closest I'll ever be to another planet. Let's look at some of the other. Some of these we're going to save for. I see them. Some of the comments we're going to save for our legal Q&A coming up here at 4 o'clock. Let's see here. Yeah. I mean, we've answered this, but to infected, yes, they're going to bring up a lot, I would imagine, Mark, right? A lot?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're going to bring everything that they can find to the surface, whether frankly, whether they think it's important or not, they're going to bring every piece that they can find. And if they get done with that and they think they're missing a piece that's important, they're going to keep looking for it until it becomes untenable.
Shane, we're going to get you out on this question because we do have to transition right at 4 to our legal Q&A. Shane says, #HJB. Mark, what is the craziest thing you have ever seen underwater?
Oh, my God. The first time I saw an anglerfish, that was pretty crazy.
Wow.
I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of wrecks. I've found some old, I found some World War II airplanes that nobody knew where they were that went down during the war. And they were actually well enough preserved that we could get the tail number off and give it to the British government. And they were able to tell the family, because they could track who was the pilot of that aircraft. Found a fishing boat that sank 3 years before that still had the fishing license that was readable inside the plastic sleeve on the window of the wheelhouse.
Wow.
And we sent that into the government, and they were able to inform the family. Some maybe not so funny but crazy things is, during construction processes, because I did some gas and oil construction for a while. You've got, multiple cranes and multiple ROVs in the water, and you see tethers that are literally, tied in bowline and square knots and wrapped around. It takes like 5 hours to get the thing unhooked.
Mark, stick around. We're going to transition now to our legal analyst. Folks, let me just tell you who it is. Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know. Mark, you're going to like Peter. He's like you. He's direct to the point, and another Florida man. So you're going to be in good company here as far as Peter and I. And of course, you are going to be part of our conversation as we talk about the legal situation now regarding the loss of life out there in the North Atlantic. Let me just quickly point out, hey, for folks in Tampa Bay, turn on WFLA News Channel 8 because this man right here is getting ready to deliver a live report on, of course, the story that we were talking about earlier. So if you're looking for more coverage on broadcast television, there's Jeff Patterson. He's out there in the field getting ready for live television. We look forward, of course, to Jeff's report being featured on WFLA.com. To our audience on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes with the lawyer you know, Peter Tragos, right here from Clearwater, Florida, as we talk about the legal questions that you might have after the Titan submersible tragedy. Don't go anywhere. Mark, Peter, and I will be here in just a moment.
WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Live on WFLA Now, this is Hey JB. Here's JB Buteau.
The immensely complicated legal situation surrounding the Titan Submersible tragedy, leading to questions that we are going to attempt to tackle here this afternoon on WFLA Now. We're live in the WFLA Now Stream Center to answer as many questions as we can from you, our audience, wherever you are watching from, to look at how this all unfolds now going forward. Welcome back, folks, to our ongoing streaming coverage of the Titan Submersible tragedy, of course, in the North Atlantic, following the aftermath, now that we know that the 5 people on board the Titan sub are presumed dead. Let's bring in our 2 special guests, and now being added to our special guest panel. Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know. Mark Martin has been on stream with us for hours over the course of the last 36 hours, a retired U.S. Navy submariner. And we'll get his hashtag fixed because he is hashtag hey Mark, but hashtag lawyer you know. See, Mark, he is, of course, he's got the brand going with lawyer you know, so he gets the special hashtag there.
Hey, like I said, it doesn't matter if they hashtag me. I can't figure out how to get to it anyway. So.
There, you know what? That is a refreshing part of having you on stream. Mark, we'll bring it back into the conversation here in just a second. I just want to bring in Peter here for the first time. Peter, you're paying close attention to this. There have been a lot of legal questions in our comment section, and people asking exactly, are lawsuits inevitable? Regulations, how are those going to be presented? Also, too, how we have this now with multiple nations involved, the UK, Canada, the United States, France, a lot of different moving parts here. Good afternoon to you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. And while Mark might not know how to find the hashtags, he'll get to places we could never dream of finding.
I like that.
And I think that's kind of where we can start this discussion, is just the community of people that explore and find things and innovate. It's really important. We should want that as a society, but we need to do it the right way, and we need to be careful who we bring with us. And that, I think, is where some of the legal questions in this case come from, is what did the passengers know? We know about the waivers that they signed. How specific were they in detailing the risks that they were undertaking and doing something that very few people on the planet get the opportunity to and even want to do, frankly? I mean, I'll leave that to Mark and these guys to do, because I'm not interested. And I realize I only know this much of the risk, and I don't want to do it. So I am interested in finding more out about what they knew and how this happened and how it could have been prevented. But there are so many questions that we still don't have answers to.
So let's go right to it, Peter. And you can now use hashtag lawyer you know, hashtag hey Mark, hashtag hey JB, and we're going to start to spotlight your comments on screen so that we can answer these legal questions, because they are complicated. I wouldn't even know where to begin with something like this. But Peter, you've been digesting this now over the last 24 hours, really since that press conference yesterday. What is your top legal question? What's something that's on your mind that you're focused on?
In everything that we have seen and heard from people that were passengers in the past, from the CEO and interviews he did prior to making this trip, how was this explained to the passengers? We know that the waivers mentioned death multiple times. They explain that there's risk of serious bodily injury, that this was not certified, that this was not tested by other people, and they waive all risk and they hold OceanGate harmless in every boilerplate language you possibly could that we've seen in waivers forever, since waivers have become a thing, which again was because of the judicial system that we even put waivers in place so that people would walk into situations with eyes wide open and they would be informed of what they were walking into. But some of the language is vague, like the risks were explained to us, but not detailed in the waiver. So how were the risks explained? And the only context we really have is from interviews from the CEO where he said this is unsinkable, just like the Titanic. And when he's done testing it, it's going to be ready to rock and roll. And we've all seen the controller, the Logitech controller in the Camp World Light and other things that may be concerning to your average person. But from passengers that have been on this before, they say, we knew the risk. We knew what we were walking into. We understood that we could die. Yet they all qualify it with, but they had done 25 dives before. Nobody had ever been hurt. Nobody had ever died. It's been going for 3 years. So in my head, I figured it's safe if they're going to let journalists go on it, if they're going to let these wealthy people go on it. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't safe. So what did they really know is the big legal question.
Mark, do you want to hop in here? Is there anything as far as the waiver process, verbally what is told to the passengers? Peter's bringing up some good points here. Do you want to hop in?
Yeah, I've got a comment on that. And I think, and let me clarify this, I'm a complete idiot when it comes to the law. But I will tell you that I agree with his comment on the waiver that, okay, yes, it says that it's been, that you're getting in a one-off experimental vehicle that hasn't been classified or certified by any regulatory body. Seems pretty cut and dried, yeah? But the average person, I don't think, has any comprehension of what that statement really means. Okay, I might die. But as Pete said, okay, well, they've been down 20, 25, 28, whatever, how many dives they've made. Nobody's been killed. Nobody's been scarred. Nobody's been, but for somebody who does what I do, I'm inherently familiar with what that warning means and would refuse to step in it if it's, because I know what the risks are. And obviously you haven't addressed all of them because you haven't had anybody check your work. That's probably as critical as I've been of OceanGate. But yeah, I mean, I think for the average person, I don't think that wording, and I don't know what else they told them. I don't know if they explained it verbally or anything else, but it's really hard for the layperson to understand just how many things can go wrong. And it only takes one.
Let's get to this question first because it's the most prevalent, Peter, in our comment section. And I'm sure, Mark, we'll have more conversations about what was communicated, the waiver process. There's a lot to break down over this next half hour. Really, we're now down to about 20, 25 minutes. But Dexter82 says, #HAJB, to whom the jurisdiction of the accident belong? This happening in the North Atlantic, Peter, creates some international complications, does it not? Could there be lawsuits in multiple countries?
So the answer is, of course, it depends. There's probably going to be fights about this, but in the waiver, the copy of the waiver that I have seen, the choice of law is actually the Bahamas. So that could be where we start based on OceanGate's waiver and documentation that I've seen so far. That's my best guess just based on that.
And why the Bahamas?
I have no idea. It's choice of law. So when you're writing a document, you can put in there that if you're going to sue us, then we choose this venue and jurisdiction. And if they sign it, they're agreeing.
Wait, so yeah, if you don't know why, is there some legal advantage that could be, that would be more beneficial, or is there a financial reason as to why you would want it out of the Bahamas as far as jurisdictionally?
That is outside my scope of knowledge. Wow. I don't know. I've never seen that before.
That's now, was that something that raised your eyebrow when you saw that?
I mean, I just don't know what the benefit is of the Bahamas, but if there is, I would guess it would be beneficial to OceanGate since they're the ones that chose that choice of law. But it's not uncommon. That might just be where they have their lawyers that they work with, and maybe where one of them lives.
Right.
I don't know the answer. Those are the normal reasons from choosing the jurisdiction you want these cases to happen in.
Mark, any idea for you as to why the Bahamas would be on the waiver?
I can do a little bit of speculation. The Bahamas used to be known as a flag of convenience, along with, you've heard ships that are flagged in Liberia, that kind of thing. And part of that has to do with the regulations about classification and certification. If you're flying a U.S. flag on your ship, then and you're conducting interstate commerce, then every member of your crew has to be a U.S. citizen. If you go foreign, if you go internationally, when you get to the other country, wherever you're going, you can do a crew change for people that are not U.S. citizens, but the captain has to be a U.S. citizen, no matter what, no matter where you are in the world. If you're flying an American flag on your ship, the captain has to be a U.S. citizen. And when you come back to the U.S., if you have foreign nationals that are crew members, you have to replace them with U.S. citizens. The UK has its own certain set of rules. Spain has its set of rules. Panama has its set of rules. Some are more lenient than others, and that may be one of the reasons why they chose the Bahamas, because of classification, or again, that's just pure speculation from a non-lawyer.
To quote a journalist that I follow and admire tremendously, but as far as questions being asked like that, a wise man once said, "The answer is always money." And I don't know if that's necessarily true in this case, but could there have been I'm just opining. Could there have been? I'm asking the question. A financial reason as to why the Bahamas specifically was selected. But let's move on to Strode's comment. Hashtags for you and I, Peter. Does the waiver really mean anything? Can a company really sign away liability?
So yes, the waiver does mean something, and yes, you can sign away liability, but you have to do it the right way. There's a lot of ways to get around waivers. There's fraud, if there's concealment, if there's gross negligence to certain levels, if it's not a knowing waiver and they don't understand or weren't told all the risks that they were waiving. And just talking about choice of law and how important that is, there are certain states in the United States that don't recognize liability waivers like this at all.
Wow.
So depending on what state you choose, obviously, most companies aren't going to choose that state for their choice of law, but it does make a huge difference. And I'm not an expert on Bahamian law, so I don't know what the benefits there are, but I would assume there are benefits to choosing that venue.
Yeah, and why the very first question that we had on this particular section of the stream about jurisdiction is so important, because every jurisdiction just follows its own sort of rules, policies, procedures. Carly wants to know, really, this is the money question, Peter. Families cannot sue beyond the waivers, can they? Or is there an avenue for a lawsuit as far as the families specifically go?
So if you just think about it this way, almost every time you have a surgery, every time you go to an amusement park, every time you get on a plane, every time you do these things, you're signing waivers, you're agreeing to things, you're agreeing not to sue for certain things. But we see lawsuits all the time in plane crashes and when roller coasters go bad or a harness breaks. And we see, medical malpractice cases where they cut off the wrong limb or whatever it is, even when waivers are signed. So lawsuits still happen because there are still protections in place for people, even if they sign waivers. You can't just do something grossly negligent. You can't fail to maintain something. You can't fail to fix a known risk that is likely to lead to serious injury or death. You can't just do that stuff because somebody signed a waiver. So you're still able to sue, even though there are waivers in place, unless you did everything you could to maintain something in a reasonably safe condition. And that very well could have happened in this case because it seemed to be a pressure implosion, which is a known risk. And there could be some that they did absolutely nothing wrong. And the fact that they had a Logitech controller has nothing to do with how this catastrophe and tragedy happened in this case. And that could very well be the case. We don't have all the details, but as Mark and I were discussing off screen, I would assume a reconstruction of some sort is going to happen. Experts are going to look at this. and they're going to figure out exactly why and how this happened.
Interactive journalism here at play, and we're going to feature at least a comment that includes a source. This is, again, according to one of our commenters on YouTube Live. Yes, YouTube Live, #KJB. Apparently, Bahamas Maritime is ranked among the top shipping registries with over 64 million gross tons of ships. Source, London International Shipping Week. So clearly, this might not be something that is so strange after all. We brought up this point, Mark, you and I previously. I'm going to bring Jake's comment in to get Peter's perspective on this with the legal sort of situation moving forward now, especially. Jake wants to know, is OceanGate finished as a company after this incident? Mark said unequivocally yes. What do you think, Peter?
So from a lawsuit perspective, I have heard that they were not able to get insurance, which is not surprising to me with all the issues that we've heard. So even if they were to fold or go bankrupt, lawsuits, insurance would still cover and pay out if there was insurance. Because there's not, lawsuits would likely bankrupt a company like this. Because it seems like it's a pretty small community, my guess is nobody would really want to work with them anymore. But I also wouldn't be surprised if all the people that were working at OceanGate end up at a similar company because they are so specialized, because they have experience doing things that not a lot of people in the world can or have done in the past, that it wouldn't surprise me at all if they resurfaced somewhere else. But I don't understand how anybody would go with OceanGate on any future excursions or explorations like this. That would shock me.
Right. That the trust has really been shattered, of course. This is a great question from Obey Chels. Phenomenal question about chronologically how this falls now. Lawyer, hey, JB, will lawsuits have to wait until an investigative report is done, Peter?
Have to wait is very specific, and I would say no, they don't have to wait, but they should. I mean, they have to have a reasonable basis for why they're filing their lawsuit. Some of that, again, can be based off what people were told, what they knew, whether they understood the risks, was there any coercion or fraud or concealment. You might be able to find that out without an investigative report. I would say it would be foolish to file any lawsuits or do anything before you actually have the information from some sort of investigative report involving experts that can explain exactly what went wrong and how the company should have handled things differently.
Right. The investigative report is going to provide a lot more clarity, considering that there's so much that we still don't know about what actually happened down there. We know that an implosion happened, but as far as what led to that implosion, what the weakness was, what the failure was, and what went wrong exactly, that will be pending a very complicated and I'm sure elongated investigation. Let's go to this comment because it's also great. And again, a reminder that the youngest on board this expedition was 19-year-old Suleiman Dawood. And Ruby asks, Peter, in relation to Suleiman, can a 19-year-old really know about the risks signed away by the waiver? And I wonder, there's different ages in different countries, right, where you are considered an adult, where you can sign instead of having a parent or guardian sign for you. So I wonder in the Bahamas if there's a certain age where you are considered an adult and when you can sign a legally binding document like that. But what do you say to Ruby's comment?
Yeah, I don't know that answer about the different jurisdictions, but most places 18 is an adult. And if he is an adult, then yes, he can sign waivers. He can understand risks. He can make a knowing waiver of his rights to sue them. He can. Does that mean he did? Does that mean he actually had the knowledge? And that's a different question. And that's something that would potentially be a question for a judge or a jury in the future.
For what it's worth, just a quick search on Google. Let's bring Peter back on screen. That the adult age is apparently, from what I'm seeing, initial search, it appears to be 18 years old in the Bahamas. So if there's any change on that, or if anybody wants to fact check me on that, please feel free in our comment section. Let's continue the conversation. Mark, anything to note as we continue to hear from Peter as far as the legal future here?
I agree with Peter's comments in that a lot of the people that are working at OceanGate are going to be able, although again, this is a very small community. The community of explorers is small. The community of people who provide the vehicles for those explorers is even smaller. Some of those people are probably going to be able to find some jobs, if not in submersibles, then maybe in some shipbuilding capacity or something like that. Again, it's it's a legal question. My personal opinion from a business standpoint is, I think that they're in deep trouble.
I want to get both of these on screen really quickly because they're about to disappear on my screen, scrolling up so fast, but we'll get both of these on. Greg Watts says, #KJB, to me, being certified, not being certified is negligence. This is a great, interesting sort of point to introduce into our conversation here. That one has now disappeared. And before I lose Haley says, #KJB, lawyer, with the CEO being in the sub, who would be held responsible? Let's start here and then go to the certification question next. Peter, we obviously there's a hierarchy with OceanGate, but can we answer Haley's question?
I think it's owned by OceanGate Inc., so it would be the actual company that would be held responsible. Potentially, there are people in the company that are making decisions that could be held responsible. If they have insurance, again, that's something that would attach in a situation like this. So, I mean, just having the CEO on board does not absolve the company. Obviously, to me, though, that is a big part of the puzzle or piece of the puzzle. He believed it was safe. He believed everything was fine. He believed that they weren't going to implode, or he would not have put his own life at risk building this sub to go down. So his waiver was knowing, but was anybody else's? That's the question. I think you go down the line and everybody has a different knowledge base going into this and knew different factors and understood things differently. So maybe the 19-year-old kid did not have the same knowledge as obviously the CEO of the company. So those cases would be handled very differently. And
let's also remind our audience that Mark here knew Stockton Russian Life, the CEO of OceanGate that we are referencing with this comment. And as far as his confidence level, Mark, it was stated in many reports. You have communicated it here on stream. This is somebody who thought that this really would never happen. At least he said that. At least he indicated that publicly.
Well, and as Peter said, if he believed otherwise, he wouldn't have climbed inside. Do I think his confidence was misplaced? Yes. Do I think he believed it? Yeah. Why would you climb into something? Why would you climb into something that you thought was a death trap?
Exactly.
Unless you're intent on committing suicide.
Yeah. Our two guests here very much on the same page. Peter Tragos, the lawyer, of course, he has his YouTube channel, his social media accounts where he provides legal analysis and does live streams very similar to this one as far as answering questions from people. Peter has been on stream with us before many times. Mark Martin, sort of a newer guest who joined us for 5+ hours yesterday here on stream. We have Peter, if it's okay, another 10 minutes, if that's all right, before we go.
I've got 5.
Okay, let's do 5 and try to at least get this the certification question answered before we wrap up with Peter. But this is also, Mark, this also is something that you could perhaps chime in on here about. The previous question that I can no longer animate because it has faded into non-existence was about the fact that it was a non-certified vessel. Peter, how does that fit into the equation legally?
It's definitely a big piece of the puzzle, but that was referenced in the waiver. So the fact that it was not certified itself is not going to be something that you can bet your whole lawsuit on. The real question is, what does that mean? Did they explain what that meant? Did they explain how risky that makes it? Or did they just tell them, yeah, we didn't need to get it certified to go down there. It wasn't a big deal. Why would we need to get it certified if we can make this trip without certification? Which I've heard explanations like that as well. So it really depends on how they explained the reason why they didn't get certified and what testing they didn't have to do and what parts they may have had to use if they would have gotten it certified.
Peter Tragos, the lawyer, Peter, I don't want to overextend you here. So what I'm going to do is give you an opportunity here. I think you've already done some content on your channel talking about this, and with obviously this is going to be a story that is going to unfold not over hours or days, but weeks, months, years. So as far as people that have more legal questions about this going forward, do you have any live streams planned, and how can people follow you?
Yeah, I'm planning on doing some live streams, going through the waiver at some point today, and just kind of following along if legal things come up. You know, I'm not going to try to explain the science behind it or how all of this works on my channel. We try to stick to the legal questions and what could happen in a court of law and in different judicial systems. So if you're interested in that, check out the lawyer you know at Tragos Law and all social media stuff. Would love to hear what you guys have to think about it and see if I can answer your questions. And I will definitely be back on here with JB in the future.
Yeah, and quick check, because I one more question. How you doing? You're all right these days? You know, you and I, we've chatted here and there over the last several months. It's hot here in Florida. You hanging out, you know, doing your golf thing?
I'm great, man. I've been playing a lot of pickleball, a lot of golf, getting out there in the sauna that is the outdoors of Florida. Yeah, man, I'm great. I'm great.
Peter right here with us in the Tampa Bay area, of course, friend of the program. Peter, thanks for popping on, man, and hope to chat with you soon. I'm sure we'll be on stream again before you know it.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you, Peter.
Great to meet you, Mark.
Yep.
Thanks.
Peter Tragos, Mark Martin, JB here with you, and of course, you can follow Peter on the lawyer you know on his social media channels. We are going to begin to wrap up here with myself and Mark Martin. And this is what will likely be our final live stream of the week. And what we're going to try to do is just get people have been, you know, putting in the comments section, Mark, repeatedly, oh, get this one last question into Mark, this one final question in if possible. So I don't want to shut those people out. I don't want to hang up on those people, so to speak. While Mark here has another few minutes, let's just quickly go through some of the final hashtag Hey Mark, hashtag Hey JB questions of the week. Regarding this story. We have done, I've lost count of how many hours we have been on stream from Monday to now, but it's been a lot. It's going to be our last live Q&A here over these next few minutes of the week. So we'll try to get some good questions that haven't been answered yet or addressed yet. Mark, any thoughts while I wait for these final questions and comments to come in?
No, it's been a tough week.
Yeah.
As I said, sometime yesterday or the day before. You know, it's always a sad day when you lose people, especially somebody like PH. You do inherently dangerous things, and sooner or later, something's going to go wrong. Could some things have been mitigated? Obviously, the consensus is yes. I'm not well versed enough in all of it to put out my private opinions at this point in time. I want to get some more information. I want to talk to some more of my inner circle, see what their general consensus is, and see if they've got any information I don't have. But it's been a tough week. It's, you know, we lost 5 people. I think the one that affects me the most is probably the 19-year-old.
Yeah.
That's it, I guess.
I've been thinking about the 19-year-old as well. I've been thinking about all the families, but this is a double loss for the Dawood family and a father and son. I can't imagine what that is like for them. And we had a moment of silence. We had a thoughts and prayers moment for an extended thoughts and prayers kind of conversation with our audience yesterday on stream. And so let me just again reiterate, and we'll end our stream by honoring them, but let me just reiterate how much our thoughts and prayers here are with those families, because I've noted in the past about how I've had some, some days in my life that their tragedies should never be compared in any way, shape, or form. But when you are living through a very dark experience in your own life, you never wish that upon anybody else. And so I can just say that I can't imagine what this family is going through, what all the families are going through, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. And I mean that with all the sincerity in the world. I mean it. Emil, This is perhaps a good final question to bring on screen. Although if I see, I'll try to get maybe some others, but I know that this one is going to launch us into a conversation that could be extended. So Emil says, #HJB and Mark, what key thing do you think we learned from this event, which we can take away as an important lesson for the future? I have an answer to this. We're both hashtagged here. My answer means very little compared to yours, Mark. What is the key thing do you think that we learned, to answer Emil's question?
I think that the key thing that we learned is that, deep ocean exploration has been marked by pioneers since 1960, when Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard took a 7-foot diameter sphere hung underneath a big tank of aviation gas down to the deepest part of the ocean and made it back alive. How crazy do you have to be? And Don Walsh is the deep submergence god. We're pioneers. We push the envelope. We try to mitigate the risk. The rules are there for a reason, but the rules can't stifle innovation either. I've refrained from this in the past, but I guess it's time. Stockton was proud of breaking the rules because he felt like it stifled innovation. And what I wish is that he would have been able to find a way to be an innovator and still stay within the rules. I understand that it would have taken, several extra years because he was using new material with a new design and all of that. But what I think that we need to do is come up with some way that we can use common sense safety and protocols and rules without overduly stifling innovation, because that's what exploration is. It's innovation. That's how you get to places that nobody's been before, is because you've done something that nobody else has done before, or you've applied things in a way that nobody has done before. So that's my biggest take on it is can we come up with a way that experimental craft that show innovation can somehow be integrated into the certification and classification process, if it's nothing more than having an experienced third party. That's my big thing, is that you can't get to some place that nobody's been before without doing something that nobody's done before. But you got to do it in a smart way.
I'll get into my response here in a second, but do you think that how much will be learned when we have a final investigative report, a conclusive report, and more in-depth analysis as to what exactly happened on Sunday?
I think that what the experts in the field will learn is exactly what happened, exactly what feature or element or item failed to cause this catastrophic event. The general consensus in the community is that this was a when, not if event. I haven't said that before, where I guess we're at the point where I feel okay doing it. But a lot of experts in the field felt that this was a when is this going to happen, not if this is going to happen. So really what the experts in the field, now the general public is going to learn a lot of things that they never knew about before, but the experts in the field are going to learn exactly what went wrong. And hopefully that will help us better design and develop newer vehicles.
10-4. My response to this is, and it was immediate in my mind when I read the question, and apologize. I'm going to apologize for perhaps some people that might find the answer to be a little bit cheesy, but we're going to learn a lot from this going forward, I'm sure, in Mark's community, as far as from an engineering perspective, how to better build underwater deep sea exploration vehicles, and how to go about, exploring the depths of our world safely, both manned and unmanned, how we explore more of the ocean, which we, of course, is so vast and unexplored. My gut reaction to reading this question was, there is so much goodwill in the world. I think really the amount of headline, activity, news coverage that has been paid to, I think that there needs to be more people speaking about how heroic of an operation this aimed to be. There was a lot of different nations, private organizations, human beings that did everything they could to get to this spot with a lot of different equipment, a lot of different technology, and a lot of different expertise and experience, bringing it all together in one unified spot in one of the most remote places on the planet, as far as active, shipwrecks that get. I know that there are more remote places. Believe me, I'm not that naive, but this is an extremely remote place, and with harsh conditions, both at the surface, even though we know that the weather was optimal on certain days, but especially under the surface, we're talking about extremely challenging conditions. The word complex was put out by the Coast Guard over and over and over again about the complexities that existed with this type of search and rescue, and then subsequently search and recovery operation. All the individuals, even though the rescue operation was never really believed to be possible because, of course, this catastrophic explosion was believed to have occurred on the way down, that should not discredit and discount, and we should not forget about the incredible heroic efforts of the people that all converged from different nations, different companies, all coming to one place for 1 week, trying to do something to save lives. And I think that has kind of been lost in the last 24 hours, and I hope that people at least remember that. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about those crews, how deflating it must be to have gotten that news yesterday. But it's a lot of human beings, a lot of men and women working hard and stopping everything going on in their lives to try to bring this to a happy ending. And just because we didn't get the happy ending that we wanted doesn't mean that we forget about those efforts. And that's my long rant and answer to this question, because this could have been a heroic effort, and people would have celebrated the men and women that made it out there to the wreckage of the RMS Titanic, of course, 2.5 miles up at the surface. But just because we didn't find the 5 people alive doesn't mean that we should forget about those efforts, Mark.
I'd like to make a comment about that.
Sure.
I think that your comment and my comment really show the different aspects that we have. I'm thinking of it from a technical aspect.
Sure. Yeah.
You're thinking of it from a reporter, but I will tell you that in the events that we've had in the past, like the Kursk, like the Argentinian submarine, like some of the other non-maritime related, that's what always happens. Different countries all come together. They put their issues aside, and they work together as a group to solve the problem at hand. And yes, I agree with that completely.
Wouldn't you agree that's inspiring, Mark, to see that? To see
it is.
Yeah.
It is, because with all the crappy news going on, it's nice to see people put their differences aside and all try to work together towards one goal.
Yep.
And if we could as a human race figure out how to do that a little more often.
That's right.
As opposed to stabbing each other in the back and throwing stones all the time, every time somebody didn't agree with, your thought or your opinion, life would be a lot easier.
And you know what, Mark? Maybe I'm just so sick and tired of how, how divisive things have been in our country more and more so over the years.
Oh
Clearly.
yeah, and I get to turn that off.
Yeah, it's
when I'm
right.
sick and tired of it, I can turn it off. You do it for a living. You can't get away from it.
It's not. I'm not breaking any news or breaking any rules by saying that our country has become more polarized in years past. And I think perhaps my mind went to that answer just because to see multiple different types, people from all different kinds of backgrounds, from all different kinds of countries and public, governmental agencies, private organizations, everyone just kind of come together for one unified cause.
It's
to me,
sad
was
that it's sad that it takes tragedies to get everybody to do that. 9/11 was a great example. Everybody was at everybody's throats. 9/11 happened and the whole country came together. And then 10, 15 years later, oh, look, we're starting to split up again. It seems like it takes a tragedy to bring us all together, and it works for a while. And then if we don't have another tragedy that brings us all together, we start acting out again.
But you know what, to that point, and just because I'm curious, as far as your field, deep sea exploration, underwater, going to the depths of the world, is there that divisiveness, or is it more of a global effort?
No.
Yeah, explain.
No. Because
when you say no, it's not a global effort, or it is a global effort?
No, it is a global
Right.
effort. Okay, is there a little bit of infighting between specific individuals on an occasion? Yes, we're human beings. But the community as a whole works together for basically a common goal, which is deep ocean exploration. And it doesn't matter whether you're Russian or American or Canadian or Australian or, if it's your business, then, is there some competition? Yeah, but you don't really see cutthroat competition in this community. You'll see healthy competition. Some guy develops something new and he patents it and he uses it for however long, but as soon as that patent's up, then people are willing to share it. And even without patenting something, people come up with new ideas and they get shared, and okay, well, I came up with this idea, but it might be able to help you. And it does. And it's a back and forth kind of thing. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're Japanese or Russian or Australian or Canadian or, whatever. This community, and maybe it's because the community is so small and so specialized that everybody knows everybody else. And that if you step on this guy's toes, then somebody else is going to step on your toes down the road. If it's not him, it'll be somebody else. So and I'm not saying that getting your toes not stepped on is the motivation. It's just we know how hard this is, and we know we can't do it by ourselves. It takes everybody. And, some people contribute more than others, but it is a global community where you very rarely see any infighting.
You got room for one more?
And there's some pretty big egos in this community.
We appreciate how much insight you have brought. Before we do our official wrap, again, Mark Martin, retired U.S. Navy submariner, folks, knows two of the people, had a connection to two of the people here on your screen as we look at their pictures, and we'll read their names. Shahzada Dawood, Suleiman Dawood, Paul Henry Nargileh, Stockton Rush, and Hamish Harding, all passing away, presumed dead, after, of course, the catastrophic implosion that occurred on the way down in the Titan submersible tragedy this past Sunday. Your chance, Mark, this is our last opportunity to do so, to just kind of speak to the five victims, the five people that we lost here in this tragedy.
Yeah, I think I said it yesterday. There were a couple of people that made this comment that knew PH even better than I did. Out of the whole group, he's the one that probably would feel that this is a fitting resting place for him. He loved going to the Titanic. He knew more about it than anybody else. He was doing what he loved doing, and if you gotta go, that's the way to go. My heart goes out to the families of everybody else involved. I've already expressed my sympathies to PH's son, and not much else I can do about it. But yeah, it's been a sad week. It's been obviously an exciting week. It's been a busy week. Hopefully, some positive things will be taken out of this. I expect the next several days, unfortunately, in the news could be ugly. Again, there's human nature. There's going to be criticisms and finger pointing, and hopefully the people that know what the hell's going on can manage that, and we can all come out of this for the better.
Us here at WFLA also pass along our thoughts and prayers, our condolences to these families. This is of course this has been a difficult, doesn't even begin to describe what it must be like for these families and those who know the five. But of course, we tried to do our very best to treat, of course, our coverage with as much sincerity, respect, and dignity as possible. And we know that sometimes these live streams, and we know from previous stories that we've done, people connected to those individuals that we talk about so often on stream, they find our live streams. And so we hope sincerely that we did our very best as far as being as respectful as possible, being and more just as important, being as accurate with our reporting, being as thorough with our reporting, because misinformation is a weed. And we, of course, we take the credibility of our organization extremely seriously. So we try to, of course, report with accuracy and warmth. And hopefully we were able to do that over the course of our streaming coverage this week. Mark, this is I have to stay on stream for a little bit longer just to make some final points. This is a farewell to you, my friend. What an honor it has been to have you on this live stream all week. There is an enormous amount of people out there that appreciate you. And it's not even just directly on our live streams, because what's happening, again, people are taking clips from this live stream, posting them to like TikTok and Instagram and other platforms. And people are saying, who is this Mark Martin guy? And thinking, really looking at you as the voice of reason over the course of this week, as far as being a steady, calm, and also just extremely experienced voice throughout this entire process. We can't thank you enough for joining us on stream.
I appreciate it. I certainly appreciate the way that you and the rest of the team has treated me, and hopefully I've helped.
You most certainly have. I can pass along from our commenters here the amount of thank you comments. Look, Mark, I know that you're not a techie, so let me explain. Go to the YouTube live in the hour. It takes a few hours for it to process, but hours after the YouTube live, go into the comment section, whether it's the live chat replay or go into the comments below. And believe me, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. As far as some of the response, people who appreciate you and think of you as somebody who provided them with a lot of answers at a time when there was a ton of confusion out there. So a huge thank you again. And I'm going to share something out on Twitter later on tonight. Chelsea, one of our this is interesting. Chelsea, one of our
Chelsea talks a lot.
Chelsea talks a lot. One of our moderators, and a shout out to Michelle Widener, Makeup by Rocky, a few others, our great YouTube moderation team. Chelsea found your Instagram and linked it. So
now I just got to figure out how to get on it.
People are gonna, which is so hilarious, because if that is the real, it was DSV pilot. One, I think it was.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Hold on, I gotta click this link. Is this your Instagram? Because you might gain some follow. I know that you haven't asked for it once. You haven't asked for it, which has been but you're getting a lot of followers on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't even know what the hell that is. So
well, it was as I am usually
on.
Oh
Jesus. All right. The real okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Okay. It's people are sending me messages. Okay.
Mark, I hope you don't take offense to this. One of our team members here at WFLA said that perhaps one of the reasons why people find you to be so relatable is that you come across as everyone's uncle. Have you ever heard anything like that? You ever heard anything like that?
That might be the nicest names anybody's called me in a long time.
Okay, yeah. I'll let you. It might take some time. And you know what? When you're in Tampa, we'll have our Instagram chat, you and I, and I'll maybe show you a couple of tricks. All right.
Okay, because I can kind of sort of get into some of them, but yeah.
Welcome to a little bit of my world as far as
you teach me about Twitter and I'll teach you about Scotch.
Yeah, man, it'd be great to tank up one day and go on a dive together. That would be awesome. But Mark, I'm sure I look forward to meeting you in person next week when you're in the Tampa Bay area. Thanks again, and all the best to you, my friend. I'm sure we'll talk off stream.
Thanks. Anytime anytime, just give me a shout. And if I'm available, I'm there for you, man.
We'll do. Mark Martin. Everybody, retired U.S. Navy submariner who we can now say has done 8 hours of coverage over 2 days with us here on stream. He was originally scheduled for 1 hour, but his expertise so invaluable, and also his people were commenting yesterday when he was gone on YouTube Live, Facebook Live. I kept looking over, and it wasn't even with a hashtag, but I just saw 3 words. Bring Mark back. And so I kept inviting him, and he kept coming back on. And so we appreciate Mark's time. Let me explain now how this is going to go forward. I have a bit of an explanation to make. Over the course of this week, Monday through Friday, people have been asking in our comment section. A lot of comments have come in. JB, why do you never take my comment? JB, what? I've been commenting for days. Why hasn't my comment or my question been featured on screen? Let me explain something that might seem very basic, but and it is somewhat basic, but let me please explain. When we have the volume of traffic, the volume of comments that we have had come in, it makes the interactivity part a little bit more complicated, because on my screen, comments are scrolling in so immensely fast, so quickly. And so the more and more that we have a vibrant comment section, the more and more it becomes more of a lottery as far as getting your comment on screen. You might have had the most brilliant question or comment, but because of how quickly they've been scrolling on my screen, there is a chance that I missed it. And my apologies to you. It is not interactivity, and interactive journalism is not a perfect system. It's not a perfect format. It's a forward-thinking format, but it is not perfect. And so if you've been one of those people trying to get your comment spotlighted on our stream so that it can be featured in our conversations, I will do my very best in the future to try to spotlight more and more comments. Sometimes the conversations can be long-winded. The answers can be long-winded. I can be long-winded. And so we want to get more comments on screen, but it's always trying to carry the conversation forward. And always remind yourself, too, if you've been repeatedly asking a question in our comment section and I haven't clicked on it, perhaps the reason is because we might have already answered that question before you hopped on the stream. There's always that chance as well. I am not going to continuously answer the same question or pose the same question over and over and over again. So that's a little bit of an explanation as to the interactivity part. Of course, I talked yesterday about how interactive journalism is being practiced here at WFLA. It is a major part of the WFLA Now Stream Center and our operation as far as WFLA.com, our digital operation. If you would like to provide feedback on how we're doing, how we can improve interactivity, as I'm talking about, what we can do to make the viewing experience more interactive and more just better for you overall, you can shoot comments to either the newsroom and really the news managers at WFLA. Any feedback, good, bad, or ugly, it doesn't matter. You can shoot that feedback over to news@WFLA.com, news@WFLA.com. And let me explain again, the feedback is so important because whether it's good, whether it's bad, it helps shape our coverage in the future. The next time that we're on stream, your feedback might influence how we try to go about our coverage. So that feedback component is so important. And while I've said it multiple times this week, I have to repeat it, because if we don't get feedback from you, our audience, after our streams are over, then it inhibits our ability to improve in the future. If you want to send a comment to me directly, you can DM me on one of my Instagram or social media platforms on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I have to get caught up on those messages because I have been so focused on Titan sub coverage, eating, hydrating, and sleeping, and that's basically been my life this week. You can ask at home my wife. That has basically been my life this week. So I have a lot of DMs to catch up on, a lot of emails to catch up on. If you want to email me directly, if there was a question that you wanted to pose that was not featured on one of our live streams, you can email me at heyjb@wfla.com. News@wfla.com goes out to the powers that be. heyjb@wfla.com goes directly to me. So depending on how you want to provide feedback or if you want to get in touch with us here at WFLA. One more time, really appreciate the efforts of our YouTube moderators. Our YouTube moderators help keep our comment section respectful and on point and eliminating the trolls. And we appreciate their volunteer work as far as helping us out and doing what they can to make sure that our comment section is welcoming. Michelle, where are they? Guys, comment, and I'll give you guys a shout out. Chelsea Talks a Lot is here on YouTube. Michelle Widener, who helps lead our moderation team, does a great job. Makeup by Rocky, I see here as well. Team Brittany is there. Our mods are just... they do this out of the kindness of their heart and because they believe in what we do here as far as interactive journalism. They're some of the biggest fans of what we do here at WFLA. So they deserve a lot of credit. And they are part of our team, our stream team here. So thank you so much to them as well. This has been a very difficult week, of course. And so what I would like to do is I would like to end here with a moment of silence for once again the 5 passengers that were on board the Titan Submersible, and I will again read their names here on screen, and then we will be ending our streaming coverage. And again, you know how to communicate with me going forward, whether it's by email or DM or following me on social media for when the next live stream is going to be. I'm at WFLA JB on all social media platforms if you're trying to get a hold of me, or you can email me at heyjb.com. But I want to end out this live stream by having a moment of silence for the 5 passengers. The 5 passengers, a father and son duo, Shahzada Dawood, Suleiman Dawood, Paul Henry Nargile, Stockton Rush, Hamish Harding. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families, and this is a moment of silence in memoriam of them. Thank you for watching.